Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Neutral Lounge, a podcast about video games and computer technology. I'm your host Joe, and with me is my co-host Alex, and our guest Jay. Together, we make up the Neutral Lounge. In this episode, we talk about Dark Theory, releasing complete, the Sony showcase and news. Are they playing 4D chess? Epic vs Apple, lawsuit outcomes and findings, Status Quo, video games industry versus gamer time, 40-somethings need not apply, D2 Resurrected, more Activision and Blizzard Woes, and Nintendo Direct. Without further ado, let's talk tech. Hey Al,
Hello.
how you doing?
Yeah, good.
Thought I'll ask that same old question again.
Yeah, it's not going too bad. Had my first day back in the office. Bit strange, but interesting. It's busy at lunchtime. Otherwise, yeah, not too bad. Busy at work. How about yourself, Joe?
Well, it's the same. I mean, I've been going to work for about a month now, pretty much twice a week. Now moving up to 3 days a week. First time I went back, it took a lot of getting used to, I've got to say. Just very strange being back in the office. And what I'd say is that it was like the place was trapped in a time bubble. Because we got back and there were cults and bits and pieces that had been left behind that no one had picked up or cleared away.
Well, ours probably was quite different. There was they overhauled our offices, so
Oh yeah.
my old desk had disappeared by the time I'd got in.
Yeah. I mean, it was clean, don't get me wrong, but there were just bits and pieces here and there that they neglected. And there's this area on one floor where it just looks like a forest of coat hangers, those standing coat hangers. And they must have moved everything to that area. So when the time came that, they could find everything. It's like a forest of them almost, so that was really bizarre. But yeah, getting back was strange, much needed, I'd say. I'm getting back into the swing of things. Other than that, at least the weather's kind of holding out.
Yeah, so far.
Yeah, so far. I think we're due for a good next week. So, we'll see. I'm also off on holiday soon. So I'm finally getting onto a plane after what feels like about 2 years.
Yeah, it will be.
It would be about 2 years by now.
Wow.
So,
I've literally forgotten what a beach feels like.
Yeah. Well,
and real sun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
have to get
there is that.
VR headset on.
Correct. It's not quite the same, is it, Al? Not quite the same, but yeah. I mean, I'm off to Dubai for 12 nights, so obviously quite looking forward to that.
Nice.
Gonna try and recharge. Let's see what happens. So yeah, all good on my end anyway. How about you, Jay? What's going down with you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me back. First of all, I forgotten what an office even is. I've been in my new job for nearly a year and haven't been to the office. Haven't physically met anybody, and I've got no intent on going back. So, which is quite good because I've been able to do the pickups and drop offs for the kids, and even go to my own classes in the evening as well. So, and have energy to play games in an evening versus kind of taper off when the kids go to bed. But yeah, I've been good. I mean, good health. We've also booked Dubai, but we're going in December time.
Okay, cool.
And seems to be half the price compared to half term. I think you're going. Aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I thought to myself, this is expensive.
It was literally double. You probably booked earlier, right?
No, I didn't. I booked
Probably
quite
when
later on.
the guidance changed, right? I guess on the
Yeah.
Travel list.
Yeah, there was an element of that, but it was we did leave it till quite late, and I did notice that it was expensive, more expensive than I remember Dubai being. Cause I've been there a few times, but look, the thing is, we had to go somewhere.
It's just
yeah.
the thing with Dubai, you get the hotels are nice, they're clean, and they're quite nice, isolated environments.
Yeah,
So and it's just safe, right? I mean, I won't go into the story, but I went with a few friends about 2 years ago, and we lost our son in the shopping mall,
Whoa.
Dubai Mall,
Wow.
for 15 minutes,
Wow.
right? And that was the worst time. But if we're going to lose our child, anywhere's the safest place to be,
It's
right?
organised for one thing.
It was so
Yeah.
organised that the security had him straight away, and then.
Wow.
But yeah, that was scary.
Wow. Yeah.
But just to finish off what you were asking me, I've since we last spoke, I've actually played quite a few demos. So my palette has been satisfied playing different sort of games, and I guess we'll get talking a little bit later.
Cool.
Halo and Battlefield 2042. But yeah, good. I'm looking forward to the end of the year as well. Just to hopefully get some time off and play some games.
Yeah, definitely. Before we move on, I just wanted to put out a correction. When we were talking about Intel in the last podcast, I kept on referring to XE as Z. And I just wanted to put out a correction, as it was starting to really bother me again. And guys, with that said, let's move on to our first topic, I will say. Okay guys, the first topic we really want to get into is Dark Theory Release Incomplete. Release Incomplete. I'll try and set the scene here of what I think it is. Yeah. So we know about the controversy surrounding stuff like Cyberpunk. Obviously, service games or games as a platform are more prevalent these days.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the internet's really taken over the world, or on a more positive spin, is basically binding it together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we've got different styles of game now. We've got games as a service or a platform, and they're rife with MVPs, more viable products. We've still got the old school types of games or delivery of games, whereby you get it on a disc or a cartridge. Yeah, and you might get patches for it, and you might get an expansion for it, let's say. But it's kind of what you got on day one is what you got, if you know what I mean. But with all of this, there are issues surrounding quality, issues surrounding completeness of the game, timing of the release, what role these different models have to play, and obviously the internet. It's given people different opportunities in some circumstances, different ways to kind of game the system, and basically not necessarily pursue a very consumer friendly approach to game delivery and consumption.
Mm-hmm.
So these are just my thoughts. Just thought I'd chuck it out there, set the scene a little bit, and I think what I'm going to do now, Jay, I'm going to hand it over to you, and why don't you just kick this off?
Yeah, sure. So I think this is quite an interesting topic, because I'm sure you guys feel this as well. Certainly as a gamer, a long-term gamer, I just feel that in the last few years there have been a number of products that have been significantly hyped, and when they come out, they just either come out as not having enough features, or having features that are broken, or they are just incomplete against a vision you would expect, right? Either by a genre. And I'll use Destiny as a reference here, just selfishly, because obviously I play it a lot, but just to kind of give a bit of colour to what we're actually saying. So Destiny, I think, released as a broken game because the vision was course corrected. So when it came out, the gunplay, the worlds looked pretty, but there was no soul, there was no story. And I think that wasn't Dark Theory, that was because there was turmoil in the studio. As they've then fixed that, I feel that it's gone through a wave of being really bad to really good to really bad, really good, in a kind of, you can almost draw like a wave on a diagram. And there was an interesting video that I think I mentioned to you guys in the shared, which is basically someone was actually stating this theory, Dark Theory, where rather than a game coming out and being popular for the first few months and everyone storms to that game, and then the user base suddenly drops off, and then no one is interested in that game because the next game coming along in a few months' time. If you, like Destiny, the game comes out with far less features than you would expect, incomplete, lots of things that are broken, and then the community play it for a shorter period than they would do with a normal game, but it then has a whole bunch of a narrative and a story to say, well, we've got all these new things coming in another 3 months' time or 6 months, and then it creates the interest for people to come back and go, oh, I wonder how that game is looking and how it's playing, and then it's suddenly good, then it becomes broken again, and you kind of go in the game, out the game, in the game, right? And that keeps it in the media, and it keeps people interested. Now, the other part of the theory is not only does it help with the long tail of engagement, it allows to stretch out the length of a game, particularly like Destiny. They spent a lot of investment in the story and the world and the universe. They're effectively making more money. It might not be, it'll be less money from initial sales, but the game is in the media constantly, I can certainly see that with Destiny. However, I do think there are games that look like they're in that model but aren't, and Cyberpunk being an example where it's just a complete flop. But if a game does follow the model of what we're this dark theory, I think it's a very dangerous game to play, because if you're really bad initially, sometimes people aren't just coming back.
Yeah. There's plenty of examples. I think we can probably go over as well. But yeah, keep going with your kind of last bit, something on that.
The only thing I want to add, and you guys are I'm quite new to kind of MMOs. It's Destiny RPG light, but mixed with a first-person shooter. But I think a lot of these, the lessons learned and the models have been worked out through World of Warcraft and a bit of Diablo and all these other games. And I just think that it's all been more planned out than I think people realise. And I can see that trend happening, and Halo is another one. I think some of the controversy, some of it's planned, some of it probably isn't. But yeah.
Al, being a all-time experienced World of Warcraft, MMO geek, right? Let's call you that. Or let's say MMO veteran. That sounds a little bit more kind of like gamery.
So.
Grinder.
Yeah, go on. Give us your take on this.
So I would firstly say I agree that in the last few years we've seen more of these games that are being released incomplete. And I would say, when I say the last few years, it still feels like about 4 years. If you even think Destiny 1, I felt like that was pretty much like that too. So it's not just a new problem. I don't know. It's a strange one, right? Part of me thinks that I don't think they're that smart to do these sorts of strange, let's release it in such a mess that we can go and try and hype it up again. That just feels like I don't think they're that smart. The other bits, I think, is probably more of a symptom of the way development has kind of changed, right? The whole agile DevOps model. There are smaller things that teams are supposed to be trying to do in kind of smaller piecemeal bits. And no doubt the gaming industry is probably going through that kind of pain and cycle too. That we've probably seen in our own, in our own industries as well, right? So
yeah, definitely.
I don't know. I don't think it's as deep as it possibly is. You can definitely correlate. It looks like there are some patterns, but then, as Jay was mentioning, Cyberpunk hasn't recovered. I would say Fallout 76 hasn't recovered. I just bear to think, it's like, why would you release it in a mess just to piss off your player base? You're just like, yeah.
How about if a game comes out with a good initial impact, but the DLCs every year they leave some things out, and purposely, and it may necessarily be purposely broken, but they underinvest in the features.
For sure, it's like trickle feeding, right? So there is part of the theory of a longevity of a game, right? So you don't want to give too much content, but then there's a balance of, I guess it's difficult, right? Because what you're trying to theorize here is, you've got some hardcore gamers who will literally blitz through the content in a week or two or however long, and then you've got the casual gamer who will just spend, months and months and months on the same content that a hardcore gamer would have covered in like a couple of weeks or something. But then it's just balancing that and making sure that you have almost both at the same time, because if you release more content, then the casual gamer won't be able to catch up. They'll be stuck stuck back on the old stuff. And then the hardcore gamer, they'll continue to blitz and maybe they'll get bored very quickly if you don't give them the right pacing of content. So there's that real difficulty of balancing the two things, and it's interesting. World of Warcraft, I guess, had a pretty good model, I think, around it. If I think back to Destiny 1 and 2, when a raid comes out, to me it feels like between 1 to 2 weeks it's already completed. A raid in World of Warcraft takes months. They normally aren't cleared in the first day or the first week. Basically, you'll need to grind through and work out the strategies of these bosses because they're so much more complex. And it will take you multiple weeks, multiple grind sets before you even get through to the places you need. So it's a difficult balance.
It's interesting that, because what I feel is that people do know. They actually, to Jay's point, I think they do want this perpetual kind of like, I'd call it a sine wave of some sort.
Yep.
Don't confuse this with having a roadmap and planning your peaks and troughs and kind of working out when you might get the next bump up in revenue with producing a competent game or feature. Yeah, because as we know in development, right, you might be working on a feature and either you realise that people that you're delivering it to don't want it, or they don't like it, so you hold it back, or it's not working, you can't deliver it. So there's an element of that. But I actually think, specifically for games as a service and games as a platform, I do think they plan it out. I do think they have got this roadmap in mind. And I do think this is tied back to keeping the machine going, their cash flow, revenue streams. Yeah?
Yes.
And I do actually think there is value for games as a service to at times have a drought.
Oh, yeah.
Have a content drought as long as the core of the game is enjoyable and engaging and people remember that part of it. If that doesn't exist, then you failed, right? Because that core has to be there. About Destiny, the core's there. Warframe, the core's there. You know, I'm guessing Warcraft, you know, World of Warcraft, the core's there, and some of these other kind of fantasy MMOs that I've played. So you have that initial kind of core foundational hook, and then you kind of build everything that's around it, and it might be the lore, it might be just the missions, the additional content, but you've got all of that. I think it would be shrewd for any games publisher studio to be thinking along those lines, especially for something that you want to have a 5-year lifespan. Because at the end of the day, guys, when it's all said and done, we've got people working on these games and they need to make a living.
Sure.
When it's all said and
I
done.
don't think they... Okay, so maybe I would just say that, yes, releasing without certain features at day one makes a lot of sense to trickle stuff through. But releasing something broken is obviously... I can't see them planning that as a particular thing.
Yeah. I think that's a different problem, though. You know, when I see a game as a service, like Warframe's a case in point, right, where day one versus current day, it's completely different. But the core of it's still there, and, I don't think that thing was released broken, but it was just quite bare. Yeah?
Yeah. I think there's... I think as a gamer, if you're really passionate about a live service game and you want more content and there's not enough, I think it's quite easy to find excuses and point the finger. And I think what you mentioned, Joe, as well, it's a business at the end of the day, right? And they're probably, it's an interesting topic. Do I believe in dark theory? Probably not, but it's an interesting topic. But I think, any studio would be mad to release a broken feature. I do think that, let's say, in a sandbox of a first-person shooter, they might not balance everything perfectly for sometimes a bit of experimentation to see what happens, but also in 1 month, 2 months' time, they can release a balancing patch, and that also creates that another bit of interest. Let me go and check it out. And I think at that level, it probably does happen. So not broken, you can't play the game, but broken in terms of balancing, it probably does happen. Whether they make more money off this cyclic cycle, I think that's a given, isn't it? I think if you've got the core base, like you're saying, Joe, I think it's clever to have ups and downs, because if the community is passionate about something, if a game has like a bad season
Mm.
And they might have a bad teacher on purpose. It creates lots of conversation. People come on, oh, what about if you have this, and maybe we should do it. And as a gamers, we're excited to talk about those things, right? I can imagine them saying, right, let's make this a bit of a downer season on purpose. Not only because we can shift the good content later down the line, but it also let's artificially create a dip in the community, but only for a short period, because it's in our interest, and let's get the fire going, the conversation going. I think those kind of things do happen.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a natural thing as well. I mean, when you pull the blinds down to kind of get on with the next piece of development, you kind of almost hand over to your marketing machine and let it stir up a little bit interest, and that's a cycle. And I mean, game as a service also seems, in my mind, with these big updates and the next season, they're almost following a release cycle of their own, but internal to the platform itself.
Yes.
And people who invest in the game want it to be fixed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a group of people who play these games who it's not about necessarily getting new features or a new level or a new character. Please fix our game. That's what they're saying. I've only recently noticed that because obviously being quite an old school gamer, back in the day when I used to buy a PC game or a console game or whatever it may be, that was it. It's either poo or it's not.
Yeah, you wouldn't
There
get
ain't no
patches.
we're gonna
You wouldn't
fix
get
you.
Patches. You get literally the thing that's on the disc and that's it.
Correct. Correct. On occasion, right, you would get some of the developers or publishers who release a new version of something and they would push that out, or a regional version of a game. The Japan version would be better than the European version, or the US version might be better than the Japan version, and all that kind of stuff. You get that, but it would never be. You have a group of people sitting there. We need to get this fixed. Where's my Twitter account?
Yeah, exactly.
I was gonna say on the content drought and stuff like that. I think maybe on the kind of subsequent one, I'll step you through the sort of Genshin versions and the timeframes of them, and how some of them were dry filler content, as we called it. And it's happening again. But there's things in there that's almost like actually the people that have been playing it have actually been burnt out because they've had too much content, and they're kind of like they're pretty much actually probably going to stop for a while whilst Genshin sorts itself out for a bit.
So I was just going to say, I heard another podcast that Genshin made $2 billion or probably pounds. 2 billion. It was more combined than all the other.
Correct.
The
And
live
I'll show
service
you
games.
combined.
Combined. All the other live service games combined, it's made more money.
Well, how
in
long
1
did
year.
that
In 1
take?
year. It's been out for 1 year.
Wow, 1 year.
Yeah.
It's 1 year.
They've been making millions and millions per release, and it's interesting. I'll show you some of the charts that they've got on the sales, and it basically aligns to the characters and the patches. And you'll see that some of them have piqued people's interest, and there's a gap, and then there's another one that will just pique people's interest, and it'll keep going. But yeah, I think the Genshin community are quite burnt out. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens next. I think with Genshin. Makes
Makes you wonder if these peaks and troughs are really aligned to development cycles.
Well, I would say Genshin. The problem with Genshin at the moment, I think, is that basically because it's a global thing, it's basically celebrating holidays all the way around the globe constantly. So it's like, Halloween's just around the corner, so there's a Halloween event. Oh, Christmas around the corner, there's a Christmas event. Oh, it's a spring event, summer event. Oh, it's just constantly things happening, and they're having to develop content for it every single time.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I was going to mention this before when we talk about the Dark Theory. I think I'm going to use Destiny again as a reference. I get the feeling Destiny and they've said it themselves actually, that it's got a rhythm, the sine wave, with much lower expectations. They've taught the audience, we're not going to release these big content. They've said it out loud. Its longevity is being built by the studio. People in the studio play the game in their own evenings, in their own spare time, and I imagine a lot of these live service games are built by people who do that, because for you as a developer to keep building, and you have to be really passionate about those games. If it lasts 10 years and you're going to come up with fresh ideas, you have to be playing it in your spare time as well. I just, which goes back to me saying Dark Theory. I don't think it's probably a thing, but it was an interesting thought experiment, I think.
It's a way to label the negative outcomes of some of this, because maybe that's all it is. It's the intention is not really to go out your way to do some of this stuff, but as an organic consequence, because you have developer time and they're going to have their ups and downs. Like Al said, you have players who get burnt out and they need a bit of rest to recoup and then reinvigorate so they can come back to the game. Yeah, and those are kind of natural things that
they're healthy.
That tend to
They're
happen.
healthy as a gamer, not to play the same game, because it becomes a job, and that I think that's where I've because Destiny is the first game that I've ever played in this kind of RPG space. I've never been interested. If I saw a game with numbers on it, I was like, I'm not. I just switch off. But then since I've been playing Destiny, I've looked at like kind of the smaller RPGs on my Switch, and I'm interested in them now because I've got a flavour for it. But just coming back to what I was saying is having a break from Destiny, sometimes a few months or 3-4 months. When I come back, I really love it because the core is solid, like you were saying, Joe. And I've gone away and either not played games or played other games, and I think that's a really healthy thing to be a long-term gamer.
Yeah.
And on the Dark Theory thing, I wonder if they also plot out other game releases that interrupts their cycle as well. Because you imagine, a particular AAA game or something that's very popular out in the market that's of a similar style of your game. No doubt that will normally drag people's attention away from it, which then, are they planning for that? I don't know. Are they even keeping an eye on it? I would hope so.
They're absolutely keeping an eye on it.
100%. But
Absolutely.
I still, we're going to go to another topic here, but I'm still surprised by how many games come out close to their competitor within a few weeks of the same type of game. It's just, it baffles me. And Destiny's always come out in September, October, November, which is close to other first-person shooters. But that was when they were owned by Activision. They've shifted the next deal. Switch Queen's coming out in February, and I think they're going to stick to the February-March, where there's nothing else in the space because they're independent now, and I think that's a clever thing for them. And I'm happy as a gamer as well.
It's always been the thing, though, right, Joe? In the industry, it's always been for that holiday season game of the year target, which is literally You want to go for a Q3 release, and you want to go strong because you want to hit Thanksgiving, you want to hit Christmas, you want to hit literally that point in time where game of the year is being decided.
Yeah, I think if you're a game as a service though, Al, I think that's less of a problem.
Exactly.
If you're a big kind of traditional AAA title, then you're absolutely thinking along those lines because you need to maximize it. And I think we possibly need to start thinking about games as a service a little bit differently because just leaning on my experience of kind of running technology systems and whatnot, there's all the big ticket items where you're delivering new features, you're solving big problems. But the reality is, right, you got to operationally run some of this stuff, right? Yeah. Now, games of the past, and even in the recent generations, the AAA games, really, you've got your product, goes gold, get it onto disc, it goes out to the general public. You might keep a set of developers on board to patch it, bug fix and all that kind of jazz. And if there's an online component, obviously you need to think about this. But these games as a service, you've got your software, but you've also got your infra. You've got perpetual marketing around it. You've got perpetual support.
Infra is an interesting one because it doesn't always have to be dedicated servers. It can actually be peer-to-peer, which I think was what Destiny actually tried to do at one point. But then I think people started to realize it had huge amounts of lag implications, and I think they reversed it. Because there was a small period of time I remember PvP was peer-to-peer, and I was like, ooh, you don't really want to do that. That's going to be rife with cheating.
It still is.
Is it?
PvP has always been peer-to-peer, and the tick rate, I'm not that technical, right? But the tick rate, I understand, is not that great compared to other first-person shooters. But it suits the nature of the game because it's bombastic with big explosions and it's not COD. It works fine, right?
Yeah.
But the PvE. Sorry, I had a bit of a brain fart there. That's kind of a hybrid. I understand. It's a bit of a hybrid of the two.
Yeah,
But PvP is definitely not
yeah.
a dedicated service.
I mean, I think
which
for
is part of
me,
the problem,
whether it's peer-to-peer or not, I just think of these games as services that they've got loads of content hanging around. They're collecting statistics on us all the time, if you know what I mean. They've got the kind of big data BI thing going on because they want to understand what's making a player tick. Yeah, and Twitter's not enough. The server network infrastructure that makes this whole thing work. Yeah, it just a lot of it.
Oh yeah.
If a game is really successful, there's gonna be no real lull in this. You know, you release Uncharted 4, there might be a 6 month period where you might be super busy after launch because you're fixing bugs, you're maybe kind of supporting some sort of online component that won't have many legs, a lot of legs, let's say.
Sure.
But after that, these guys get shifted over to a new project.
Yes.
Or they're partially working on that, but moving over to something else.
Yeah.
On a game as a service, you get none of that, I think. Yeah, there might be some, but you have to keep the thing going. And that's where I think it's really different.
There's not many games that are mature around that, though. The only ones I really think of is like Warframe. The rest of them is like, I would expect a Destiny 3, as an example. I would expect at some point, same as they did before, they'll go like, oh, it'd be quite nice to go set up a new engine and stuff. They'll do it again. That's my expectation of Destiny.
I'm sure World of Warcraft was quite mature.
But World of Warcraft was literally just done. It's the same base engine, base code, and they've just released expansions and called it particular version numbers, and did quarterly releases of, or even monthly releases of kind of content drops.
Destiny's done that. So Destiny 3 was, they never said it, but it was meant to come out last year. But they went independent, and because Activision always wanted them to have a big release, and what they've clearly done, they've split what would have been Destiny 3 into 3 years. Now they've made it 4 years. There's 4 parts now, and they've already done the engine upgrade, but they've kept the Destiny 2 name. So what they're saying is after they finish this War's a Saga, but 3-part saga is a 4-part, they'll either drop the 2 or they'll go into. I'm guessing they'll probably go to more planets or a different solar system, but they're basically following more of the World of Warcraft model now.
Okay.
It was just Activision wanting them to do bigger releases than the numbers before.
Yeah,
which makes sense for a live service game.
They would make more money from a big release, right?
Activision would, but probably not.
Guys, that's the games as a service, the MMO, always online type of game. But I mean, releasing complete. Do we not feel it's getting a little bit more commonplace in even AAA? I mean, Cyberpunk's a case in point. I mean, that game on possibly everything other than a PC seemed to be a total non-starter.
Yeah.
Day one.
I mean, I guess there's also, what was it? The Star Wars Rogue Squadron. That came out without a single player campaign or something. But they were promising one or something like that, and I think some of the player base didn't like that, because I think in the standard classic Rogue Squadron type games they would normally have a campaign game as well as a multiplayer game, kind of in there. And I guess
sure it's Rogue Squadron? Isn't that the N64 game, Rogue Squadron? I remember having that.
There's another one. There's one that came out recently. Maybe it's not called Rogue Squadron.
Oh, I know the one you mean.
It's the EA one.
It's the one you're in the cockpit of the craft. That's not Rogue Squadron. It's something Squads, I think. Something.
No, I think there's something. It wasn't because there was Battlefront, which had a VR mode. But I think there was another one that was out recently that was a Star Wars game.
I've got that demo on my not a demo, I've got the actual game as well. I'll get the name as you carry on.
yeah. But it's stuff like that actually probably the more, I guess if you were to argue incomplete, then maybe if the remastered Final Fantasy VII, I guess you could argue that it's released it in quarters, in chapters, rather than the full game as it did before. Yeah.
It's Squadrons. It's called Rogue Squadron is the N64 game. This is just called Squadron, Star Wars
Oh,
Squadrons.
with an S, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Squadrons. What a good game the N64 game was. I mean,
such a
Oh, that
classic.
was amazing. Amazing.
But
to see that game.
And that's why I thought this one had such high hopes, right? For a lot of the community, they were keeping an eye on this to be back in that, the X-wing racing through what is it, the Beggar's Canyon and all that sort of stuff. So yeah.
They gave that. I got that free from PS Plus. Maybe 4 or 5 months ago.
That probably does include the VR version. The VR version is meant to be excellent.
Right. Okay.
I don't know if you guys ever played the VR. It was a Star Wars game, but it was a very kind of short game.
When you walk around the X-wing type thing, you can sit inside the X-wing.
I think it was part of
Battlefront.
Battlefront.
Yeah. I haven't played that. I haven't got the.
That was pretty good. That one. Actually,
That was amazing. Yeah, definitely very good. But going back to releasing complete,
Yeah.
I mean, even AAA games that are basically incomplete. Cyberpunk being a recent, well-known example. Why do we think we're seeing more of this? Because
I don't think that's deliberate.
To me, we're seeing.
I don't think that's deliberate. But if we...
No, it's not. It's not a strategy. That's for sure.
It's too big. Games are too big.
Go on, Jay. Yeah.
Sorry, I cut across you there, Al. But I was just going to say that it's just too big and ambitious. Coming out on too many platforms in one go. I think we're at this point where there's a couple of themes. I think games are becoming too big and bloated, particularly with all these side missions that don't actually add anything, and it looks nice on the map. And I think Cyberpunk is one of those. They just try to make the world too many paths in what you can do. So therefore, you got to build more, test more, and hence why it's all broken. It's similar to how we had the middle market, the gaming market, just kind of drop out a few years ago, where now we just have the big studios or the indies. I think the big studios is going to go into this period of just being cleared out, and I suspect, this is my theory, that's why a lot of these companies are, particularly for Xbox and Game Pass, wanting to be bought out. I mean, Xbox now is Eidos and I can't remember the other studios now. Who made Tomb Raider?
That was
Eidos.
Yeah, you're thinking Bethesda, the main Bethesda.
No, there's a. I forgot the name of the studio now, but the initiative making Perfect Dark. Crystal Dynamics. So Crystal Dynamics are partnering with that game as well. There's another studio, a similar sort of level. They're not AAA, but they're AA or A, whatever. And I think they're seeing that if they don't get bought out with a big studio or go into a Game Pass, they're in their middle market. They're just going to fall apart because you either got the big money and the time to make a GTA 6 and take 10 years to build it, or you're in the lower category where you got a budget to build a game over 5 years, which I don't think is enough time to build a Cyberpunk, and you're going to basically fail. And then I think they've got the indies. I don't know, maybe Nintendo is somewhere in between, but
but I feel they need to maybe kind of start considering shorter games.
But
I genuinely think that half the people out there, maybe more than half, don't finish all of these games anyway.
Exactly.
Some of them are just too long, and Spider-Man Miles Morales is a short game in comparison. This is what you want to strive for, like cheaper to make, shorter game,
full price though,
still hits the mark. There you go. I mean, like the publisher and studio still making money out of it, right?
Yeah. So I was gonna say on the darker end,
the margins. It's about margins.
On the darker end of the back to your dark theory, I would say that. Well, actually, they're probably releasing incomplete so they can release a DLC. Literally just around the corner or something, right? So there's a lot of. I've definitely seen a few of those practices where you've gone like, you literally just released the game and now you've quickly announced the DLC straight off the back of it. You've already got it complete, right? Why haven't you released it as part of the game? That's one of those things. It's like
I think our definition of incomplete, or even to a degree, what constitutes a game that's broken, if you know what I mean? Because Cyberpunk, based on that podcast we did out, I actually brought up the documentation around the releases, and I remember I did a kind of like word count, and it said crash so many times in that document. It was unbelievable. Yeah, I'm not sure about unplayable, but certainly it would detract from the experience. That's definitely it. And I also heard that there were lots of bugs in the recent Ratchet and Clank. Returnal seemed a bit buggy.
Really?
Yeah.
Doesn't come.
Yeah, I heard it was a bit buggy at launch.
I tell you what, it's going to be buggy. Battlefield 2042.
Yeah, I've kind of heard that's
It's
been
like
a bit
the
flaky.
textures on the ground just suddenly just went for a whole match. It's I'm not going to speak too long.
It's a beta.
Yeah, it's going to come out broken.
It won't be as bad as Fallout 76, I'll tell you that. Jay, if you've never seen the compilation of the mess that it was, I'll send you a video. Yeah.
I've seen Skill Up do a little bit of it as well.
Well, this is I'll send you the link, but there's basically a compilation by a guy that calls himself the Internet Historian. So basically, he basically catalogues it as end to end the whole fiasco that was Fallout 76.
It's becoming normal though. If you're creating a new game, or you're significantly ripping out your engine or whatever, like a FIFA coming out seems to be okay. COVID or not. Battlefield is just a PvP, right? And they're reusing some of their old maps. They've got some new ones, but there's some fundamental stuff in there. Like you fall out of a helicopter or you crash a helicopter, and then you're skating along the ground for like 20 meters. Or the ragdoll animations are just completely just all over the place, and I don't understand, because some of that should really be at least reuse some of the stuff from your old game, and then not add the new tweaks to make it better, not have it completely broken.
That's where I think maybe games technology and what's used in game isn't as commoditized, if you like, as we think. I mean, the engines, but you build on top of the engine. It's just like saying that you have a database on Oracle or MySQL, or you're running your application on AWS or Google Cloud. But in-game kind of like software for AI, for physics, you can't always transport it or migrate it from one game to the other.
Yeah.
There's so many things they need to test across CPUs, OS, and graphics card, plus drivers. Actually, I guess some people don't even update their drivers, so they're probably on an old version that's probably going to kill it.
Yeah, there are elements of that.
PS5.
Elements of that.
It's a hot mess. But
Jay, to your point, games are becoming stupidly complex. Sean Layden was talking about the amount of investment and money you need to make a game where you have hundreds upon hundreds of people working on these games. Hundreds upon hundreds, yeah? Who tracks all what these people are doing? What's the glue with all of these people doing what they're doing? It must be a huge challenge if you're a producer or a project manager or whatever it is it takes to kind of glue these people together. It must be a huge challenge.
I think Nintendo have got it right, where they're not doing the hardware arms race. They're not doing the arms race to the best game engine, the best physics. They're sticking to good, fun gameplay. I think that's been lost in some of these AAA games, and I think that there's going to be a little bit of rebalancing of people failing and going, well, rather than having the best new engine, the best graphics, and all these side missions and all these extra facial animations which everything else makes it infinitely more harder to test, they're going to have a bit of reality check, and they're going to have to go back to just focusing on just having stuff that's fun, because that fun element gets lost in some of these games as well.
Yeah, I agree. But I also think that there needs to be a rebalancing of expectations from publishers and to a degree platform holders. I just think the expectations of maybe development studios is perhaps a bit too high, and the time given to them is also a bit too much, or too little, I should say. And the pressures to get a game out on time, because I mean, what I understood about developing a game, I mean, a friend of mine who's creative director on a really well-known actually studio that you guys would know, but I'm not going to say who he is, and he's worked on AAA titles and that sort of thing for the big consoles, yeah. Well, what he used to tell me is that his company used to survive game on game. So they have to deliver the game, and the money was fronted up by a publisher or a platform holder. But after the game was done, the next pitch would need to go out for the company to survive. And there was a constant cycle. Hence, you have companies who want to get in bed with some of the platform holders or big publishers, or get onto Games Pass, that sort of thing. Because there's a constant churn. So there's all these pressures, yeah. And I think as games get more complex and they need more people to develop the game, and the technology's just that much more, and expectation goes through the roof, we might be seeing more and more of this.
Yep.
Yeah, we might be seeing more and more of this.
And I think COVID has
Yeah,
pulled it
yeah,
out
I
of the wash even faster.
Kind of minor miracle we've got any of these new consoles, and some of the new games also. In my view, there seems to have been less quality control or assurance. They've done enough, if you know what I mean, and they've relied on the internet or being online to save their bacon, and the fact that everything gets patched these days. Good or bad, your game's getting patched. Your system, your console's getting patched. PCs are perpetually getting patched. That's normal. So you're getting a little bit more of that.
It is quite irritating to almost on a weekly basis getting patches, and I think the new systems are quite good in terms they actually do update offline, whereas a PS4 sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't, and you come back from work or doing whatever you want to do, and then you're like, it hasn't bloody downloaded the update. Although you have a fast connection, some games still
it's lucky we're not
update
back
slowly.
in dial-up days. I remember leaving my machine on overnight,
I don't know.
just to download a couple of
I was
hundred
talking
meg
about
files.
acoustic couplers the other day. You remember those things?
And that's the thing with the live service game, they just don't work. If they don't have the latest patch, forget it. It doesn't let you even connect. So
just get the sense that as games get more complex, as the money involved in making a game increases that much, as the amount of people that need to make these games increases, and as pressures increase as well because of the money, because the stakes get a little bit higher, and the fact that we've got the ability to patch a game after release, after it goes gold. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've heard in certain circumstances that going gold doesn't seem to mean anything right now.
Yeah, not anymore. I mean,
yeah.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, I just think this is gonna potentially get worse. I really do. I mean, because we're seeing it right now.
Yeah.
I would say that this generation, from what I've seen from the start of the generation, we're gonna see more in the way of stuff getting patched. We're gonna see games that are not gonna be great day one. And they're not even service games, in my view, right? There'll be some games, like your Nintendo's, whereby quality is everything. And like you said, Jay, Nintendo, they're not in the technology arms race. They just want to make fun games with a nice kind of Nintendo aesthetic to it. And even with Sony, as much as they are in a technology arms race, they seem to want to give their developers enough time to get it right, because they don't really churn out that many games all the time. They rely on quality, because in many ways, right, they're all about AAA now.
I think the live service games are the most prickly, right? I mean, Cyberpunk, it's not really a live service game, but it's got that same level of complexity. If you think about Sony's single player, narrative driven, they're not as complex, are they?
They're drenched in quality and production values and narrative. I've never kind of dropped into some of those games and felt that I was overwhelmed with different options and different places to go, or I couldn't make up my mind what I was going to do next. It was actually quite obvious what I was going to do next, because there'd be a few options at most. But with some of these other games, it's just like, like you said, it's like, God, this side quest, that side quest, multiple options. It's quite a lot.
It's fatiguing. To be honest, I think we talked about this before. I think I personally have only got space for one live service game in my life.
Yeah,
and it's a bit live service light now. Set their expectation of not producing that much content, which is perfect for me. But just even other games that aren't live service, and so much filler side content that isn't fun. I think they'll probably cut the scope there on some of these games after going through the pain the next couple of years.
Yeah, but then I feel they'll need to slim down what they're offering then at the end of the day. And if they do that, ultimately, will everything become more of a game as a platform? maybe it's not as a service because if game as a service implies that you're always on, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But maybe a game as a platform, you build this core game and then you might roll off specific new features
That's
or
what
expansion
Assassin's
here.
Creed's doing, right? I think
Yeah,
they're making it
Yeah,
a platform.
they're all doing it. So especially a lot of the Ubisoft ones as well.
Pro Evo is eFootball,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
rated the worst game on Steam with completely broken everything.
Oh dear, dear, oh dear. And guys, I think with that all said, we've kind of gone through the whole release incomplete topic now. Let's be honest, gaming as a service, here to stay. AAA games, here to stay. But maybe let's try to be clear on the roadmap, be honest about the quality, and do right by the gamers as well. Let's move on to the next topic. So Al, I think what I want to talk about next is really the Sony showcase and really the news.
Yeah.
And a general conversation about, Sony's approach to things this generation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just kind of run through, I think, some of the snippets of news that have happened over the weeks and to a point, months. So there's obviously a new revision of the PS5.
Yeah.
People have been speculating whether it'll cause heat issues, performance issues, and I think it's been proved conclusively there's absolutely no difference whatsoever. I think Digital Foundry and Cambridge Nexus collaborated on this, and I think it's really safe to go and get your PS5 if you can find one. The new revision isn't going to make any kind of difference to neither the necessarily the heat output nor the performance.
I don't know. I think there was a slight difference, but from a performance perspective and how should I say, throttling kind of perspective, none of that was seen. And they did stuff like, what was it? Put it into a a very kind of airflow restricted kind of area. So they kind of pushed it a little bit to its limits.
Yeah, I think any changes are completely negligible, if you know what I mean. 1 or 2 degrees either way, completely negligible. Even if it was 1 or 2 frames either way, completely negligible. But the fact of the range, they couldn't see any kind of problem. Both revisions seem to run identically. Maybe there's subtle changes of the heat output. But other than that, it's the same experience that the end user gets. So not an issue.
Yeah.
And I just think it's just time to move on. I mean, in previous generations, new revisions of a console, it just isn't news.
Yeah,
but
it's just interesting why Sony must have done their own testing, right? What they should have done is just...
They're collecting data on this, yeah.
But they should have just come out straight away and said, this was their test data, and they said they observed this, right? Rather than being completely radio silent, people noticing that something's changed and then trying to do a bit of digging themselves. It's a strange one. It's one of those that maybe there's a lesson to be learned, but...
I don't think Sony have learned any kind of lesson. I think Sony are basically doing what they're doing, and it's very true to the current form. They're just radio silent.
Yeah.
They're collecting data on us or anybody who's using that PS5. And I know for a fact they're a very reporting MI/BI centric organization. That much I do know. So it wouldn't surprise me if some of these decisions are just based on the numbers they're seeing.
Yeah.
And the other kind of interesting fact is that I think this was during the Digital Foundry and Games Nexus collaboration video. They were saying that when a piece of hardware like this gets put together, it's been effectively developed in parallel. Someone might basically have the cooling unit.
Yeah.
Another person might be obviously developing the system on a chip, so on and so forth. And then it comes together. And sometimes you have a cooling system that might deliver more than you need, if you know what I mean. And then at that point, it's too late. You spent the money. You got your bill of materials, and out it goes. But over time, you've learned those lessons, let's say, and then something will change.
Yeah.
And it's going to be about your bottom line, isn't it? At the end of the day, this is what drives these companies.
Yeah, but it's just again, they could have, rather than wasting Digital Foundry's time and Gamers Nexus's time and everyone else's time and all the speculation that was out there, unless they wanted some speculation for the marketing PR angle, maybe.
Yeah, why wouldn't they want that? Yeah, that's the question. And as to wasting any YouTuber or website or the media or a journalist's time, that sort of stuff basically generates kind of revenue for them.
Yeah.
So I don't think they've done badly out of it. It's just how they're working. I'm not surprised at the radio silence. You know, they're just letting people talk about the console as much as they want to. They're not stepping in.
Yeah.
Now moving on, Bluepoint, makers of the new Demon Souls remake for PS5, have finally joined PlayStation Studios. Not big news. It was leaked some time ago. Yeah, that this was happening, and to be honest, again, this is in keeping with Sony's track record. They tend to acquire studios who they have a long-term relationship with.
Yeah.
You know, who also you have delivered quality for them. They've recently also, you know, bought Housemarque, who did Returnal, who they also had a long relationship with. This is, you know, true to form. So no real surprises here. But I'm glad they finally did it and got it out of the way. And again, very little fanfare. There just seemed to be a blog post. That was it. Low key as you like.
Yeah.
The new system software's come out. And it's a good one. You know, obviously you've got that external SSD support, improved trophies, 3D audio for the television speakers, a small performance boost actually. It gives you a few frames extra, but they're yet to support anything like VRR, you know, variable refresh rates, or HDMI 2.1. But you know, it's improving. It's improving. I mean, but again, if you ask me, no surprise, because anybody who had seen the PS3's initial system software and UI, you know, it was, in my view, kind of chalk and cheese in terms of kind of functionality towards the end.
Yeah.
There's also the regular rumours and speculation around the PlayStation 5's, you know, hardware. For example, shared cache, you know, whether it uses a shared cache architecture. But, you know, I have to say, who cares? You know? I mean, that's the reality of it. I mean, yes, it might use a shared cache. Yes, it might have stripped out, you know, pieces of the system on a chip. But it's a piece of hardware geared to play games. It doesn't really care about anything that doesn't help it do that, if you like.
Yeah.
And to be honest, you know, both the Xbox Series X and PS5 are similarly spec'd and have similar levels of performance. You know, Xbox has more CUs, PS5 has higher clock speed, and the outcome is it looks exactly the same. Games are running, it's very, very similar. End of story, really.
Yeah, we need more AAA titles on both, right? For Digital Foundry to do comparisons on. That will push it up.
Yeah, but even having said that, you know, you'll get Sony with their AAA titles and, you know, Microsoft with their AAA titles. It's not like a, you know, apples to apples comparison, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, games will, you know, win the day.
Indeed.
Thankfully, there's no new abandoned news. So for me, that's good news. Very good news. Whether it be a Silent Hill reboot, whether that app they brought out actually kind of has any value on longer term, don't know.
Yeah. Did I see them push some more VR adverts as well? I think I saw some additional things. I know we caught up on one of those, kind of one of the showcase things that we did. We kind of watched together at, but I think afterwards I saw some things around VR as well that they published out. It was only VR 1 though; it wasn't VR. You know, the second VR.
Yeah, I mean they do push out VR games now and again. I haven't seen, let's say, this VR advert per se, but they're still supporting the Verse VR headset, that's for sure. Segueing into this showcase, the Sony showcase of 2021. As you said, Al, you, I, and Jay, we kind of watched it together. I did record our reactions. I haven't actually posted any of that stuff. What I may do is post it at the same time we publish the next Neutral Lounge. Be interesting for maybe people to see how our reactions differ, from what we're going to be speaking about now. My thoughts on the whole kind of showcase have adjusted slightly.
Ooh, interesting.
Adjusted slightly, yeah. And, I've watched it again a couple of times. But yeah, I mean, let's roll into that. So the Sony Showcase 2021, how it started was actually quite strange. And I think we were all sitting there. Obviously, the video started kicking off, and we sat there, we looked at it, and goes, well, what's this? Yeah. And at one point, I did murmur, is this an advert? And lo and behold, it was. It was an advert.
A compilation of showcase items, I think. Or at least it's really small items of each, I think.
No, it was the actual advert with chess as its centerpiece, if you remember it. It was a live advert with actors, real actors and actresses, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And quite a decent soundtrack, actually, if I'm being honest, when I saw it again. Again, a strange way to start a showcase. Yeah. But I'm gonna create a bit of speculation, and I'm wondering if they're trying to send us a message. And I'll get into that at the tail end of this. Hence, I said, are Sony playing chess? 4D chess. Literally. It just got me thinking. But moving on from that, because we'll go back to that later. We'll go back about what I mean about 4D chess at the tail end of this.
Yeah.
We had the KOTOR remake, obviously. And I must admit, I was definitely very excited to see that. Because I think KOTOR's long needed a remake. Yeah. It's a definite message by Sony. Because they're getting stuff like, obviously, KOTOR on PlayStation. And they've got a degree of console exclusivity.
Yeah.
For it.
Yeah.
As we know, it's synonymous with Xbox, or has been. Certainly on console. So it's definitely something I'm looking forward to. I mean, if they can get to Demon Souls levels of excellence in terms of the remake or the reboot, or however it ends up, then it's certainly something we can look forward to, because obviously KOTOR hasn't exactly aged that well.
Oh, and we've got a remake later, which I'll touch on as well.
Yeah, exactly. But again, also coming out on PC. Yeah, also coming out on PC. The next game they showcased, Project Eve. When I set eyes on this, I was actually a little bit confused initially. I don't know how you felt about this particular game, Al, but I actually thought it was Bayonetta, or a Bayonetta game.
It was like a mix, right? Because it felt like Bayonetta. It felt like a kind of a more classic JRPG as well. There was kind of a mix of styles in there, but there was definitely the speed angle to it. So it was interesting. It felt like parts of other franchises, but I think it's a new IP. So
yeah, definitely a new IP. With some influences from Bayonetta.
Yeah.
Definitely in some of the combat. Certainly in the way the actual main character was also styled. Yeah. I would say.
Yeah.
I would say originally I actually wondered if this had any connection to Parasite Eve, which is an old, I believe, PS2 game. But I don't think that's the case. Looking back on Parasite Eve. I think I was wrong in that, with that guess. But you know what? I'm actually excited for this game, having kind of seen the kind of showcase a couple times. There was actually lots of gameplay in that video.
Yeah.
So definitely a game to look out for, especially as I love Devil May Cry.
Yeah.
Love the old God of War games. Certainly, like Bayonetta a lot. This could be something to look out for, and if it does have some JRPG sensibilities, then that could also give it a bit of depth.
Yeah.
Now, the next game they showed off, Tiny Tina's Wonderland. Tiny Tina's Wonderland, and we've both played Borderlands recently, and a damn fine shooter. Yeah, really good fun. And my thoughts of this is, why am I so interested in this? Yeah. Because really, you could argue, look, it's just Borderlands in a different setting, right?
Yeah. And actually, would you even play it on a console?
No, I'd probably get it on the PC. But
yeah.
it's coming out on the PC anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely a PC game.
Yeah.
But my thinking was, why am I so interested in this game?
Mm-hmm.
And then I realised because it kind of reminds me of Hexen and Heretic.
Mm-hmm.
Those, old classic, FPS games, set in a Dungeons and Dragons style kind of like universe.
Mm-hmm.
So I might actually just, get this one for the PC.
Mm. Do you have any idea when the release date is? Is it one of these ones that we could kind of do over Christmas or something?
I think so. I think it's quite soon.
Interesting.
I might be wrong. I didn't really keep track of the release dates for this one, but I think it's a this year thing. Hope I'm not wrong. And then we got more information and a glimpse of Forspoken. Yeah, from I believe Square Enix. And again, we're seeing a lot of female protagonists of late. Another one to add to the list.
Yeah.
For me, it looks good, and interesting. Has a pretty much a parkour flavor. Obviously, seems to have a combat system where magic is used quite heavily. Looking at the kind of gameplay footage, but again, this is one of these games that reminded me of something in the past, and that game was Primal. I don't know if you've ever encountered it. It's again an old PlayStation 2 game with a female lead character. And I just got this vibe, from it. And, going down the list, obviously, Ghostwire Tokyo looked interesting. I'm going to want to play that. Guardians of the Galaxy. I actually think looks decent. Yeah, and I think it's been unfairly treated somewhat because of the reception that Marvel Avengers had. Don't know if you've been following Marvel Avengers out.
The latest game that was on there, yeah, no, I know there was performance issues and all sorts of issues with it. So
there is a lot of negativity around that game. To a degree, I think some of that negativity has just kind of migrated over to the Guardians of the Galaxy, rightly or wrongly. You know what I mean? And I don't think it's getting a fair shake of the stick. That's the sense I have here.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's following a very different genre format to an extent. I mean, yeah, the characters are in the same universe to an extent, but still, the gameplay must be quite different, I would assume.
I don't really know, actually. I mean, it looks familiar. I don't think the gameplay was ever kind of what I'd call terrible in Marvel Avengers. The thing with Marvel Avengers, it basically, not quite reimagined, but all the characters like Thor, Iron Man, Captain America look different from the characters in the films.
Yeah, but they have to, because it's...
Absolutely, they have to, right? But I think that is also one of the problems with that the game has.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, well, I guess it's a combination of things. It depends on what Disney actually had in terms of that license to begin with when they signed up the actors. They should have thought about these other additional things,
Yeah, well, clearly they didn't. You know?
Although luckily, I would say that quite a few of the cast, they've got a mask of some sort, so then those ones don't matter, right? So
yeah, that's very true. But I mean, Tony Stark will take his helmet off in cutscenes, right?
but it doesn't matter then.
Yeah. Moving on, Deathloop made a showing, and obviously that game's got some really decent review scores. I think it's an 85 on Metacritic last time I checked.
Yeah. Scored very highly for sure.
Yes, definitely scored very highly. So, at some point I think I'll drop into that. I'll probably wait for the price to come down somewhat. I'm not desperate to play the game.
Yeah.
And then we had, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Techgia. I think that's how you pronounce it. And apologies if I've got it wrong. But it's a game inspired by New Caledonia. And New Caledonia is a French territory comprising of dozens of islands in the South Pacific. And the gameplay dynamic seems to have you possessing, if you like, one animal to the next.
Yep.
Yeah, looks interesting. But I've never come across a game that's actually inspired by. We had Vampire the Masquerade's Blood Hunt, with some sort of multiplayer game set in the same universe. Rainbow Six Extraction, which I think it looks, interesting enough. It kind of reminded me a little bit of XCOM. We had Alan Wake's Remastered. Grand Theft Auto 5 for the PS5, which looked exactly the same as the one on the PS4.
Yep.
Uncharted and I believe the Lost Legacy
Mm-hmm.
for PS5 and PC. And again, didn't really look that different if I'm being honest.
Mm-hmm.
And then this thing called Kid Amnesia Exhibition,
Mm-hmm.
which just seems to be some sort of collaboration between Radiohead, the band, and Epic Games.
Mm-hmm.
No idea what it is. But the fact that, Radiohead is collaborating with Epic Games is quite interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, in a move that I've never seen Sony do, they had separated first-party games under the PS Studios banner,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even second-party, from third-party.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they sectioned that off. And obviously, we saw Wolverine, which I'm hoping is going to be, and we've heard is going to be a bit more mature. Maybe, who knows, it might be rated R.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's coming from Insomniac. There's no release year,
Mm-hmm.
so you can imagine it quite late on because the next Spider-Man's coming in, I believe, in 2023.
Yeah.
I just understand it. But I think people should keep in mind that Insomniac can do dark and mature. Because if you played Resistance 3,
Mm-hmm.
now that was a very dark game. In my humble opinion, probably the best out of the three, the best Resistance game out of the three.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had GT7.
Yeah.
Looking super clean and sterile in kind of a good way.
Yeah.
It's a sim after all. Obviously, we've had one whole generation of consoles without a full GT. I mean, sport was focused more on multiplayer.
Yeah.
But, Gran Turismo's sim mode makes a comeback for GT7. So not much I can say about that. It looks crisp.
And I think the main thing I got out of that was the date. I think they've confirmed the date on it. So
that's right. There is a date. When is it? Is it early next year?
It's Feb. I think they had.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. There's a lot of good stuff coming out in Feb.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the few games that I would, that would push me to go and try and get myself a PS5. So, no doubt I could be keeping an eye on some, but I'll wait. I can wait a bit longer.
Yeah, go for it, Al. Remember the new revision of the PlayStation. No issues, man. You're safe. You're safe. They also showed off Spider-Man 2. It was apparently in-game footage. Obviously, a render done by the in-game engine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's obviously speculation that it could be a co-op game. Because obviously, we saw Miles Morales and Peter Parker fighting together, and it looks like Peter Parker Spider-Man also has some new powers, if you like. Yeah, some new powers. He had those mechanical, limbs.
Yeah, there was
spider limbs.
Yeah.
Very much like the film.
Yeah.
Like the Avengers film. They also had Venom in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But interestingly, I don't think, and people don't think, that Venom's the main villain in the game.
Yeah. I think even in the movies, Venom was almost a side portion of it. There's typically another one. Although I think when I remember back to the films, I think they overdid it by having too many kind of like bad guys in there on certain ones.
I think they were saying actually it's going to be Kraven the Hunter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the main bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Villain in it, if you like. So, that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
Once Spider-Man 2 was done, we also got a glimpse of God of War Ragnarok, the sequel to the 2018 God of War game.
Yeah.
So we saw, a teen version of Atreus. What I observed is a lot more density in some of the scenes and detail.
Mm-hmm.
I think I also observed what could be a more expansive level design.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think there's a scene in it when Kratos, I think he's up high somewhere, he just starts looking out over the scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking that's their way of teasing a larger open environment. But I actually do think expectations are a bit too high for God of War. I mean, that's the other problem. Because God of War was just one of the best looking games of last generation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That game, you can envision that game running on a PS5, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
as an earlier game, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe in a bump up of resolution or frame rate. But if that was running on the PS5, you kind of be okay with it. You go, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think expectations are a bit too high, and even when I kind of first saw the video footage, I kind of thought to myself, it doesn't look that different,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But that's partly because the
The last
28.
one was so good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. I observed what I think increased density in detail.
Hmm.
But we'll see. We will see.
Yeah.
I'm still expecting to be kind of wowed, but right now I'm just kind of holding back my excitement for it. You know what I mean? I kind of want to see a little bit more.
Yeah.
And maybe not part of the main meat of the actual showcase, but Cory Barlog, who was the last director of God of War, effectively teased that Santa Monica were also working on something else. He didn't say it in so many words, but he pretty much said it. So that was interesting. But obviously we had no information. Given all of that, and given that I've now seen it a few times, I think I originally gave it a 7, if I remember.
Yeah.
I later said 6.5 because I really wasn't that. I just didn't feel excited enough.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that they had, let's say, that mic drop moment, or they talked enough about what they were going to do, the services,
Yeah.
or they didn't say that, yeah, by the way, welcome Blue Point to the PlayStation Studios family. They didn't do any of that. So I said, yep, really, in reality, in terms of excitement and that sort of thing, 6.5.
Yeah.
But now I'm thinking I'm going to revise my score.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
7.5. Not a lot more. But what I will say is that the majority of games they showed in the showcase are games I'm actually interested in playing. And a few of them I'm very excited about.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of thinking to myself, well, what exactly am I complaining about? If you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Isn't it all about the games? I mean, there was a handful of stuff that I didn't care about, and I kind of summarised it as Vampire the Masquerade, Rainbow Six Extraction, Alan Wake, Grand Theft Auto 5, and Uncharted 4.
Yeah. I mean, I think when I rated it, I did it in reverse. I was like, how was the showcase overall? I gave it a 6 or something because I thought they could have done more as an overall showcase. And then, actually, I was probably on the more excited end in comparison to you and Jay because, I've been a long fan of GT, and that would be a reason for me to go get the PS5. So, I'm higher up the excitement scale.
Yeah. I do think part of this is really how kind of Sony, are doing business these days. It literally seems to be all about games, if you know what I mean. Some of their studio acquisitions, they're saying very little about, as in like publicly during a showcase via video feed. They're literally posting a blog post on it.
Yeah.
Sony are doing things a little bit differently in terms of their announcements and marketing, I think.
Yeah. And I guess the world has changed, obviously, now with the way that companies can push their own information out rather than relying on other media outlets, right? They can literally do it themselves on Twitter. They can do it themselves on various platforms, right? So,
No, I agree. I agree. There's an element of that. They're kind of assuming a lot more control over that. But yeah, I mean, I'll kind of reiterate. I mean, I think it was a 7.5. It wasn't really amongst the best I've seen from them.
Yeah.
But I just can't ignore the fact that the amount of games they showed that I was interested in was high.
Yeah.
It wasn't 50-50. It was more like a 70-30 or an 80-20 sort of split.
One thing that would have pushed it up, another 10%, I think, on each, or another rating on each, I think would have been just a bit more on Horizon. Just a bit more on Horizon would have been great, but they missed. They didn't have anything, or at least they didn't show anything anyway.
Yeah, it's like how much airtime can you kind of give some of these games? I mean, that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the Xbox and the New Horizon suffer a little bit of that because they're continuously showing their offers, and as good as that is, I know it's great, but that's like they're dedicating a lot of airtime to that.
It's a system seller. I think that's the thing.
Yeah, true. And I think it's the same for kind of, to a degree, I think the same for GT7.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't argue that. Definitely been shown off quite a bit. And that leads us nicely, Al,
Mm.
to start talking about Sony's kind of overall strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, I've said, are Sony playing 4D chess? Tongue in cheek, really. If I speak upon what they've done, I think quite quietly. I mean, obviously, there's been news around it, but it's not as if it's the type of kind of reaction that, let's say, Microsoft got with the ZeniMax Bethesda acquisition. So basically, they've bought Evo, which is the fighting games competition.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're investing heavily into cross media.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, Last of Us, the Last of Us TV series,
Yeah.
an Uncharted film,
Yeah.
and a Twisted Metal TV series, I believe, with some A-listers in these programs or films.
Yeah.
They have made investments in companies like Discord
Yeah.
and Epic, and we can expect Discord integration on the PS5 in the not too distant future. Actually, they've already said this.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Yeah.
They bought Housemarque after Returnal came out. They finally bought Bluepoint, who have also said they're doing an original game. And in the background, they've also bought Nexus, who are known for doing ports, primarily to PC, but they've actually also done ports between different consoles. They've got Firesprite, they've just bought them, who had done Astro's Playroom and the VR variant of that.
Yeah.
And they're funding or investing in Jade Raymond, who obviously had worked on Assassin's Creed and ex-Ubisoft, and obviously ex-Google now, ex-Stadia, in her new studio in Montreal, Canada, Haven Entertainment. They're also investing in Deviation Games, whose CEO Dave Ante and director Jason Blundell were ex-Call of Duty devs at Treyarch. Yeah, Treyarch.
Yeah. Yeah.
It sounds like they're working on some sort of multiplayer game for Sony. And then you've got the Destruction All-Stars dev, Lucid, now working on a new Twisted Metal game. And generally speaking, Sony seem to be also investing in locking down IP rather than buying outright studios. For instance, what they've done with Square Enix, as an example. If you look at it, Microsoft has 23 studios versus Sony's 17, including Bluepoint, the newest acquisition. But Sony are just doing lots of these little things around the edges, if you know what I mean. You know? And I don't know if the net effect's going to be the same or not. Because, they can't front up the money for someone like ZeniMax or Bethesda. They don't have the money for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you got this email, Al, but I got an email about PlayStation Trials.
Trials.
I don't think
so.
everybody got it. At the moment, it itself is literally a trial. It's another piece of A/B testing. And literally, you can download the newest Death Stranding Director's Cut, and I think the newest Sackboy game, and you can play them for a limited number of hours, free.
On PlayStation 5,
Yeah, it will be PlayStation 5. At no extra cost, obviously. I don't think it's tied into PlayStation, Plus. You just get to sample it for, I think it's between 4 to 6 hours.
Okay.
So that's quite interesting.
I mean, that just sounds like a demo, unless it was special thing. I mean, it sounds like a demo to me.
You could call it a demo, but it's not a demo because I think it's the full game. I don't know what they're trying to trial necessarily. Yeah, I mean, people are saying, is this something they're looking at because of Game Pass? Because if it goes well and someone likes the game, what is that going to lead to? It's going to lead into a software sale. And they would have given somebody, let's say, 6 hours of game time, which for a 20-hour game is not insignificant. It's an interesting way of delivering something that seemingly looks free, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but if it's not tied to PSN Plus or some kind of subscription, then I don't know how they're actually... It just feels like demos and trial versions of games should have been available before, but anyway.
They're trying to drive sales. Because it's not quite a demo, because usually with a demo, you get maybe kind of one level. And you never usually get anything for 6 hours, if you know what I mean, or 4 to 6 hours. So it's something a little bit more than that. But it's going to be interesting to see what the outcome of that is. And we also heard they were trialing this PlayStation specific video service out in Poland.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all these little things they're doing around the edges. And I'm wondering, is that one day in the future, right? All of that's gonna come together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
One Sony.
yeah, I'll be surprised if a lot of this, especially the cross-media stuff, isn't being driven by the One Shot Sony initiative. You know what I mean?
It would make the most sense, right? You should
of
be
course.
able to, if you've got a good Netflix series, a good movie, you get sales in various other things related to it. Literally a whole IP set that should almost like carry
Correct.
itself.
Correct. I mean, you correct. I mean, and you use whatever strengths you have and whatever expertise you have. And I think that's what they're going to be leveraging going forward. It would not surprise me if some of the PlayStation's biggest IP, end up in this whole film, television series, game, double, triple kind of threat, format, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It would not really surprise me. And the other thing I've got to mention is that there's rumours of a potential partnership between them and Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
As well. So there's all these things happening around the fringes, and I think by themselves, it sounds really unexciting. When I say small in comparison to what Microsoft have been doing, But when you look at it in its entirety, and let's say they manage to basically stitch all these separate parts together,
Yeah.
that could be quite interesting.
Mm.
That could be quite interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I guess joining up forces with Netflix is an interesting one, because if you argue the thing that we're not talking about is Amazon Prime and the stuff that they're pushing there, which is video gaming services as well, which is starting to squeeze those other areas as well. So Netflix partnering with Sony makes a lot of sense. And actually, they're starting to build things. New World, I think it's just started to come out.
Yeah.
It seems quite popular. It's still a bit clunky, but I had a few release issues. It got queuing issues right now, I think, is the problem. So people can't get onto the games. But it's a threat, right? So, Netflix is getting squeezed by Prime Video. I'm sure the other kind of gaming services will get squeezed by Amazon, especially with its size. It makes sense that Sony and Netflix would partner up.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I mean, Amazon could be in a superpower going forward. That's the reality of them. And one thing I didn't mention, I think Sony has acquired this company called Crunchyroll.
Oh, Crunchyroll, that's for the anime.
Yeah, the anime side of things.
But I think that's because was Netflix already working with them? I can't remember which, but Amazon are also doing anime as well now. Basically, Crunchyroll was the main sort of anime streaming service to the sort of English-speaking market. They were getting squeezed by Netflix already.
And a partnership from a gaming perspective also makes sense to me, because they've got a load of gaming-related anime on Netflix.
Yep. I was going to say, what was it? I think it was on Netflix as well. There's a reverse kind of thing where basically there was a Dota anime that went onto Netflix. Yeah. There was I never got to watch it because I've not got a Netflix subscription, but I heard it was okay.
The Castlevania stuff is meant to be kind of quite well respected as well. I mean, if you could imagine, right, Sony doing things that speak to gamers, maybe even non-gamers, putting into kind of like a one service like this, having Netflix, maybe Netflix are the company who can do the streaming part of things for Sony, rather than Sony having to kind of go out and build their own infra, which we know is frighteningly expensive. I think that would be a good way to go, if you ask me.
It'd be a very powerful partnership.
Yeah,
for sure.
No need to buy the cow, but just kind of have these kind of partnerships, like you're saying, that, because let's be honest. I mean, Sony are never gonna be another Microsoft. They're never gonna be another Google. They don't have the money for that sort of thing.
Yeah, and these giants, these Amazons, will grow and grow and squeeze you. So it's probably better to work together on these sorts of things.
Yeah, correct. But that's what I feel that Sony are up to. And they're being very quiet. I think this generation, I think they've gone with the perspective is, go ahead and talk about us. We're not going to block you. Go ahead and talk about us. Yeah? We're going to keep super silent. Like it or loathe it, that's the approach they've taken. So, what's happened recently with some of the communication doesn't really surprise me. I just do wonder behind the scenes what they're up to. They've got so many little moving parts at the moment. Yeah, I'm wondering if there's a coherent strategy around these different moving parts at all. I'm seeing a pattern, certainly with the games side of things. I'm seeing a little bit of a pattern developing with the cross-media. I'm seeing a tiny bit of it with the video content. I haven't got a filious fog why they bought Evo. But I will say that PlayStation these days is synonymous with fighting games, more so than any console.
Yeah.
So I can understand that. But then, does that play into the cross-media piece? Whereby, you know what? Competitive kind of online play, televised. It's an interesting future. Now me talking out loud and thinking out loud, they're literally not taking the same path as Microsoft. Nothing they're doing at the moment says they are, if I'm being honest.
And this is why it's interesting when we talk about them, are they good too? Who's going to win the console war? It almost doesn't even matter, because if they're going for different strategies, then actually it doesn't matter.
You might not even be sitting on the same battlefield. What exactly are you trying to win? And Al, I think with that said, us speculating whether Sony is playing 4D chess or not, and whether they even care about being on a chessboard or having any pieces on there, I think it's time to talk about the next topic. Al, the next topic we want to talk about is Epic vs Apple. Now, the ruling happened on September 10th. What I'll do is I'll read part of the statement from Judge Gonzales Rogers. The court does not find that Apple is an antitrust monopolist in the submarket for mobile gaming transactions. However, it does find that Apple's conduct in enforcing anti-steering restrictions is anti-competitive. Yeah, that's what she said. As part of the outcome and finding. Yeah.
Yeah.
However, what this really means in the grand scheme of things is Epic will still have to pay Apple's 30% of the revenue collected from their own system.
Yes, but I think it also, if you read very carefully on the connotations, is that Apple cannot restrict it to be via just the Apple Store.
Correct.
So what the judge was actually saying was also stuff like, well, okay, you can have Epic do its microtransactions for Fortnite through its own store, but they will need to attribute something back to Apple.
Correct.
Because if they don't, then actually it doesn't make sense. So I think the judge made a very fair ruling, from what I could tell.
I think it was fair. I do. I think to me it feels fair. But really, I'm not sure that's what Epic really wanted, if you know what I mean. Because I think they were trying to get around the 30% cut they're having to give Apple.
Yeah, I think the judge also did make statements around the 30% being pretty high, or something around those terms. I think the judge basically thought both sides weren't really being nice either way, so they weren't doing what's good for the market. So
it does feel like status quo to me. Because ultimately, if you attribute to this whole thing of being around, the bottom line, the 30%, that hasn't really changed. Yeah?
Well, yes, only for stuff that is through the Apple Store for Fortnite. Now, there's no rule as to what the compensation would be for Epic direct for Apple's cut. So, what is that commission percentage? Don't know. If it's less, then actually in-game they could offer it as a less price in comparison to
they could.
Apple. So they could
but they'll still pay
it.
Apple the 30%.
I'm still not sure it's 30. I'm still not sure it's 30.
It's 30%, Al.
Right now it is, yeah.
Right now it is. I mean, unless the terms and conditions are changed. But whose terms and conditions are these terms and conditions? They're literally Apple's.
They're Apple's ones, yes, but the 30% probably only applies right now until they change the rules, but only to stuff through the Apple
Al,
Store.
I think the ruling means, and they've got until December 9th to do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
It means that Apple has to allow another means of, let's say, paying or monetizing outside of the App Store. But it doesn't really say how much.
What's Apple's? Well, yeah, what's Apple? So I think it does say that Apple still gets a share. What that share is.
Pretty much going to be up to Apple, right? This is what I mean, Al.
Court case number 2.
Maybe, but if you know what I mean, that's still going to be up to Apple, right? To a greater extent, in my humble opinion. But the other thing this does also, because let's say other companies will still have to pay the 30% or whatever percent it ends up, right? And let's say you've built your own system for collecting, the payment and doing, all of that sort of thing. There's going to be an operational overhead in doing that.
Yes, only on the basis that this is where it gets interesting. Is that actually there's probably a way to identify it, as long as you know which platform the user engaged from. I.e., if it was from iOS, then you know it should have been Apple's store, even though technically they didn't pay through Apple Store. And then similarly with Android or whatever other format. But they need to track the metrics, right? So like you say, they have to do something to monitor this, to work out the logging, to track these in order to come back with the numbers.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's going to be hugely difficult if your application runs on iOS. You know what I mean? It's just iOS. There's not a mixed kind of ecosystem, if you know what I mean. I think, to be honest, it sounds clear cut. Yeah, and to really simplify it, what I'm kind of saying is that for people, or let's say Epic, if they were not gonna have to pay, let's say the 30%, let's say, right, it makes it really worthwhile, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, for Epic, but then
yeah.
Obviously, because they save on the commission and they'll probably make more money from it.
Yeah.
But then the question becomes, well, if they don't offer an incentive to the user, the player base, then why would they buy in that versus the Apple one? So,
it definitely is that. Epic don't stand to make as much as they want.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, there was no winners in that.
yeah. And to a degree, if it was a smaller company than Epic, will some of them be saying, well, what's the point?
Yeah.
I have to set up all this infrastructure and this process. I have to support and run this thing in addition to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I still have to give Apple 30% or whatever percentage they agree. So it's kind of like, what's my gain here, if you know what I mean? I haven't really gained anything, because if I'm going to pay them the same amount I was paying them when I was not doing this, why do it? This is what I said, like, is this just status quo? Basically, it does, because it doesn't feel that it's moved on.
It is until they have the agreement on the new platform, whatever that is. Yeah.
And if Apple have to change the percentage,
correct,
because they don't have to do shit.
Yeah, exactly. Agreed.
I can't imagine Apple doing this out of the kindness of their hearts. Tim Sweeney, I absolutely agree with you. Do you know what I mean? This is a part I'm scratching my head here. Al, let me actually read some of the other statements verbatim. I think first I'll get to Apple's. Apple kind of released a statement, and here it is. We are very pleased with the court's ruling, and we consider this a huge win for Apple. The decision validates that Apple's success is not illegal, as the judge said. As the court found, both Apple and third-party developers like Epic Games have symbiotically benefited from the ever-increasing innovation and growth in the iOS ecosystem. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I don't think Epic actually released a statement or a comment officially, but Tim Sweeney on Twitter Today's ruling isn't a win for developers or for the consumer. Epic is fighting for fair competition among in-app payment methods and app stores for 1 billion consumers. So that really says it all for me.
Yep.
You know, I don't think Tim's that happy, if you ask me.
Well, he wanted more, right? He clearly wanted more. But
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you were to ask who won the most out of that, then Apple to an extent. But to be honest, there was no winners, but Epic lost more.
Well, Epic didn't gain as much as they wanted.
Yeah.
I think is what I'd say.
Yeah.
And really, kind of Apple have got until the 9th of December, I believe, kind of allow people to transact on in-game payments through other kind of systems outside of the App Store. But again, it just doesn't sound like it's going to change an awful lot.
No, it won't. It won't.
And Al, so I will say enough about farcical Epic V's, Apple, lawsuits and the like. That doesn't seem to change anything in reality. I'm glad that the taxpayer hasn't had to kind of front the bill for this. That's all I can say. And I think with that said, let's move on. So Al, the next topic I want to get into is really Diablo 2 Resurrected and the ongoing Activision Blizzard Woes. But let's start with D2. I kind of know you've been playing D2.
Yeah.
Be good to kind of, first of all, kind of hear your thoughts on the actual game itself.
Yeah, so I didn't pre-order. I bought it literally on the day of launch, and I've been playing since. I've been probably playing, it feels like every day. Maybe I'll skip a odd day here and there, but it had the kind of classic Blizzard launch, shaky first day with issues of connectivity, players with their progression rolling back, all sorts of things. It was people were up in arms around it, but they quickly fixed a lot of that in terms of server stability issues, rollback issues, and other things. And actually, they have been patching it relatively well. So, and I'll probably speak on some of the game immersion-breaking, game-breaking type bugs. But otherwise, it's really good. I've absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it. It's very true to the original, and there are significant quality of life improvements in there. And I think they've got a really good base to work off now, actually. I really do hope that they will actually extend it and add more things. And actually, I'd be more than happy to pay for the extensions onto it as well. So, yeah, no, I think it's a really, really good refresh of Diablo 2. A 20-year-old game. Now, and there's memes on the internet that basically, shows, here's to another 20 years of Diablo 2.
Nice. I mean, have they changed much of it? Because I understood that it was really built on the same foundations. Obviously,
No,
it's the same in effect.
Same feel,
yeah.
Same feel, absolutely same feel. I used to play this game to death, right? It has all the same, how should I say, lag mechanics, click mechanics. Almost everything feels exactly the same, except for there's uplifted graphics, uplifted quality of sounds, and everything. It's got the same kind of mode in the way that Command and Conquer kind of remaster also has the kind of switch where you switch from old graphics to new. It has that kind of stuff, and it is very true to the original. Feels very, very much the same. There are a few nuances that people have picked up on in terms of differences, but I suspect it's the way that some of the coders have interpreted how the original worked. So you basically, if you played it to death and you knew some kind of hidden nuances to the game, there may be some slight differences, but otherwise, very true to the original.
Okay, I see. And I mean, are there any changes to it that kind of bring it, let's say, up to date? If you know what I mean. I don't know how to put this. I mean,
Yes.
There's obviously certain ways you design games these days that people weren't kind of doing, back in the day. So, is anything along those lines?
Yeah, I would say firstly, shared stash space between your characters, because back in the day you literally had to drop your item on the ground in another person's room, hope they don't close the room, jump in and find the item, pick it up. So all that sort of stuff is gone. You've got a shared stash you can transfer your items across on, which is quite nice. Admittedly, that's quite restrictive at the moment, as in it's a good amount of space, but ideally, to be honest, I think it's a perfect opportunity for them to say they'll charge extra for extra, shared storage space.
Oh, don't tempt me.
Well, it's a quality of life thing, and then otherwise you'd have to create more characters, which was basically what we did before in the past. We created what was known as mules, which just basically carried the items. So there's less of that. I would say the game creation is a bit easier and quicker. Back in the day, you'd literally have to go onto a BattleNet, old school BattleNet lobby. The BattleNet lobby is still there, and actually it feels very similar to what it was before. However, in the past, you would have to create your own game, so you just type a random name, type a random password so that it's locked to yourself, and then off you go. Now there's a quick mode where you basically just select the difficulty, it will do that automatically for you and randomize it, so you kind of have a game to yourself. And your friends, some of the modern things, your friends can join you direct, they just right-click join game, they can join straight into your game, all the sort of standard kind of features. It's good. I'm really enjoying it. Definitely brings back all my kind of Diablo memories.
I mean, is there anything with it where you feel that they should have changed that for Resurrected, but they didn't?
What could they have changed further? Yes, an in-game trading system. So this is the only thing that's missing at the moment, and I think people have complained about it. Although, this is true to the original, which basically means that people are creating rooms with a name that describes what they want to trade.
Oh, interesting.
And obviously there are people that go onto forums which they can trade on as well. But typically at the moment, people are just using the lobby with a game name which says, I am offering this, I want this.
Interesting.
And it's a strange one where, actually, why didn't they implement a full trading system, a trading forum, or even as controversial as Diablo 3 was with the auction house, why didn't they do an auction house? It just seems really strange that they didn't go on these opportunities.
Probably because of the auction house.
So you see, the difference between Diablo 2 and a lot of other games, and this is where Diablo 2 to Diablo 3, equipment, when you use it, and I think this is basically a World of Warcraft thing that kind of kicked off, which was basically bind on equip, which was, as soon as you use the item, so as soon as you equip the item, you can never remove it from your character. Right, it stays on that account, it stays with that character. But in Diablo 2, all items are open to everyone. So you can use that item for ages, you've found an upgrade, you can then go off and sell off your old item. Or bring it down, pass it down to your lower level characters and stuff like that. So that's one of the interesting features of Diablo, which allows it to keep a flowing trading system kind of going. And I guess the other thing was I think I've probably said it to you in the past, that the loot that drops from bosses in multiplayer is basically a shared loot pool. So the fastest clicker gets the item.
Oh, that's still happening?
So you could have changed that to make more people encouraged to play multiplayer, because a lot of people, what they end up doing is they'll use multiplayer to get through, build up levels and to get through to the later content. But then, after a certain point, they go off and do their own room and do solo, because they're worried that all their efforts to kill a boss could be wasted if someone just takes the item quicker than they can click it. So they could have done something like that too. But no, I think it's true to the original. It's quite good fun. It's quite so one of the things that actually is interesting is that with the whole clicking system is that you kind of get a little bit of an adrenaline rush. You see a good item drop, you're in a shared room, you've got to click on it quick, you've got to go for it, and if you get it, it feels really great.
It's like a sub game or a meta game or whatnot.
Yeah,
that's what it sounds like to me. I mean, that's quite interesting because I was thinking as you were talking about it, I was thinking, well, there is some logic in bringing over the idiosyncrasies and the warts from the old game or the existing game.
Yeah.
And I think you can't lose sight of the fact that people still play D2.
Oh, yeah, that's the thing. Yes.
Yeah. It's not like a game that's not being played for 10 years, if you know what I mean.
And this is one of the things that Blizzard, well, you can argue maybe it's the certain developer that took on this one, but rather than what they did for Warcraft 3, because Warcraft 3, they actually shut down the original, Whereas this, the original is still running. Diablo 2, the original, is still running. So you can still go on it as on the old classic game. But Warcraft 3 was different. They actually shut down the original.
I had no
No, it was
idea
horrendous. It was
they shut down the original game.
So that's why people are up in arms, because of the car crash that they had. They have no ranking system. There is nothing. And they've been promising that stuff for Warcraft 3. And it's fundamental to the game, right? So it's just like, why the hell did you shut it down? Just why?
Shaking my head. I didn't know that. Once I heard that Warcraft 3 was the remaster, the remake, whatever, was in a bad shape, I didn't really delve into it too deeply.
Yeah.
But wow,
So,
wow.
yeah, so they've done a lot better. It was a bit shaky at the start. There was some issues with whether it was, again, logging on issues and other things. Oh, and the game-breaking thing, the only game-breaking thing I really saw was what was known as the sort of map overlap. So you normally in Diablo 2 you have a kind of this map view which sticks on top of is almost augmented onto your screen. And what happens is if you go into a game, quit out, come into another game, I don't know where the bug kind of came from, but sometimes it would hold on to the old map, but it's not reflective of the real map that you're in. So it ends up being an overlap on top of your current map, and you can't see it. You can't see where you're going because it just breaks what the map looks like. But they fixed that because basically it happens after every 2 or 3 games, and the only way to fix it. So people tried a lot of ways to try and fix it through different means, like through different tricks. But the only way to actually fix it was to exit out of the game and come back in. That was the only way to do it.
Wow, that must have been quite
annoying. It was. Once you get Diablo 2 to get to the end game, you're basically doing certain boss runs, and you want to do it quick. You don't want to waste time exiting the game and loading it back up again.
Basically trying to speedrun the thing. Yeah. I mean, in terms of the actual graphics and the audio, has actually been brought up to modern day standards?
Yeah, and I would say there are some real subtle detail changes too. So it's not just a skin remaster. They've actually added to it. So, so let's say a wall looks quite blurred. Rather than just upgrading the decal, the actual look and feel of that grid, they've actually created detail into it. Like, as an example, a wall now has a sunken bit with a candle on it or something. Something, the detail that just wasn't there before, rather than just a plain wall. They've done some really nice touches.
Have they redone the art?
The style is very much the same, but the tiling, everything, the shape in which they've kind of created the objects is all different. So it is really great. And again, you can also see it. If you click from classic view to new view, you can see the shift in that change as well.
Interesting. How about the audio?
Audio has been redone and uplifted as well. And they got the original composers, I think, back to do a lot of that stuff as well. So that was quite a cool thing.
Nice. Yeah, nice touch that.
Yeah, I'm really happy with the game, and I really do hope I hope they would look to extend this further.
I think they need to, given everything that's happening, in that company at the moment. You know what I mean?
I guess maybe also they may want to be very careful not to step on Diablo 4. I guess is the thing. If they make this too popular, then Diablo 4 will not sell as well.
Yeah, there is future versus past sort of thing, but given that historically they've supported games for a long time, if you know what I mean, that I think that would be in keeping with the trend.
Yeah.
I've heard negative things around D2 Resurrected. Yeah. And my own thinking is, I don't know whether it's because of the bad taste that Warcraft 3 left in everybody's mouth or mouths, that anything, even this, the smallest thing that's going wrong with D2, people are just on top of. You know what I mean?
And I think this is one of those things, is that, how should I say? There's different levels of gamers, different levels of entitlement, I would say.
Also true.
And I've played a lot of Blizzard games in my past, and World of Warcraft. Anyone sane that's played a mass multiplayer game will know on day one, on launch, if you do not expect issues, you live in a strange world, right?
Also very true.
So day one, you could pretty much write off. As an example, if you took the day off from work, you booked the day off, expecting to play all day, that was a bad move, man.
It's fair to say that more games have online issues at launch than don't.
Yeah.
From what I've seen anyway, especially the high profile
Yeah,
ones.
especially online games like these ones. And
Yeah.
the fact that it's interesting as well. There's a lot of theories online that were saying that actually the connectivity issues and the game issues were actually may have been as a result of the player base and not Blizzard themselves. Because there was basically, in the past, and Diablo 2 was very much like this, there were lots of people that used to do things like duplicating items. They would do lots of random things to the game in order to glitch it to create a duplicate item. So, they were theorizing that bots and other things were deliberately hammering the servers in order to do things to trick the system to cause it to create duplicate items. So there's quite a few theories that were saying that actually maybe Blizzard just unfortunately didn't have enough protection against some of these bots and these kind of DDoS type attacks.
Interesting.
I don't know if Blizzard will ever be open up about what happened.
Yeah, I don't think they can be too open about that.
Yeah, especially if there was DDoS type things or attempts at duplicating items and things, because basically Diablo 2, the original, was rife with duplicate items, both on the online mode. A single player mode was easy, because all you could, and I was able to do it in my old days, is basically it's a save file. Literally, the whole game was on a save file. So what you could do is you could just one character could save you could change your file to be read only, and you could take a copy of the file, dump all your items out, exit out the game, and restore your file. There you go, done.
Got it.
So there's simple ways you could do it, and obviously online modes and server modes, then it's just slightly different, but you can still glitch the system a little bit.
Oh, interesting. Look, I mean, it does sound like D2's launch clearly hasn't really been smooth, but equally it doesn't sound like it's been as terrible as some people are kind of making out.
No, I think it's massively
what I mean?
improved. I mean, right now, I don't really have any issues with it, so...
It's good to hear. I mean, I don't think Activision Blizzard could ill afford any more negative press, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, that was the thing. There was a lot of people were worried that the game was not going to sell well, and there was obviously announcements for the developers themselves that said, the consumer has to make up their own mind as to what they want to do with this. Really, totally understand the issues around Blizzard and the way that some of that team was operating before, and things like that. And again, by purchasing this game, who are you supporting? What are you advocating? It depends on how much you read into it, I guess.
Yeah, very true. Very kind of fair, really. And Al, I think with that said, with D2 Resurrected sounding as if it's actually decent.
Yeah, I would recommend it. I would recommend it.
Recommended. And that, really, it's not a repeat of Warcraft 3.
Oh, God, no.
Thank God for that.
Yeah.
And from what I'm hearing is it's something that actually I'm wanting to get into as well now.
Yeah, it's got a good base. Basically, I look forward to seeing what they want to do next. Okay, because they could start a cycle where basically they stopped releasing patches for Diablo 2, because Diablo 2 was well supported. New items were being patched, new items were being released. There was a ladder system, basically. Quite similar to Diablo 3 with the season system, where you'd go in, create a new character, a new season. They had a ladder system as well. So you could actually create things that were kind of hidden away for one season, one ladder, and then, kind of be promoted back into your kind of wider stack. So I'm actually happy with the game as is, but if they come up with a roadmap of things they want to do next, I'd be all in for it. So,
And I think with that said, we've given D2 its kudos, and now it's kind of time to move on.
Cool.
So guys, the next topic I want to get into is gaming industry versus gamer time versus gamer age. What I really want to discuss is, coming off the back of the last topic, we know that games are getting complex. Games require a lot of investment of time. And gaming as a service is almost another life.
Job.
Yeah, it's another job, definitely. Gamers these days have a lot of choice. Not only in games, but in all sorts of things. Like other types of media, music, whatever it may be.
Movies, yeah.
And then you have this, I think, quite wide band now of gamers. Because I myself are, quite an old gamer in comparison. I started off from the 8-bit computers. But being an older gamer, I have less time to invest. So I just wanted to kind of bring this topic to the fore, get your kind of view on it, because obviously, we're at different stages of our life. We've, some of us have got families, some of us haven't, some of us have been gaming, for X amount of time, whatever it may be. Hey Al, you know what? I'm going to start with you. So, what's your take on
It's
this?
an interesting one, and I think it depends on. And again, we touched upon it probably on the topic before around the differences between a hardcore gamer and a casual gamer, and also age. Age is actually very important to it, because what you'll end up finding is there's going to be a mix of those in those different categories. And obviously, what typically would happen is the different age groups would then have more disposable income, in theory, because you've been working, or should be working. And then, actually, you'd be, what does the developer want to focus on? Who do they want to focus their efforts on? And actually, is the money angle the key thing for them? Or do they do something like, the younger age group, let's get them hooked, nice and early enough, and then many years down the line, they will still continue to spend. When they do get disposable incomes. I don't know if they're thinking that deep into those different angles and those different pieces, but from the perspective of a kind of a progressively aging gamer as well, I would say we have to make a choice. You have to almost how much time you can commit, and just trying to stick with it. I think that's just reality, unfortunately. The more responsibilities, the more things we've got on. Should we bounce to Jay? Do you want to give it a shot?
Yeah, I'm making sure I've interpreted the question right, because for me it's like a journey, like in anything in life, right? Whether it's learning something via school, or learning it in the workplace, or your hobbies. Everything goes through a journey, and I think it makes it fun, right? As you were talking an hour getting older and having less time now, we'll all get more time later as we ease off at work. I think it allows you just to experiment with different types of games and the thing that we love, and I think that keeps it fresh and interesting from a gamer perspective. And I think it from a developer perspective and a publisher perspective, it's interesting how they're adapting the models of the different types of game, of the mature nature of certain types of games, making games more complex, targeting particular age groups, experimenting with different games, and even the youngsters, they're not going to play the sort of games that we are going to play going forwards, and it was the same for the gamers before us. And I just think I have to see this as this topic as a very positive and healthy thing for an industry, for all those three parties. I guess the last thing to say on this before we bounce the topic around is that I'm time poor now, but it makes me appreciate gaming even more, and I'm more interested in the new side of things now, which I haven't been previously. All of this wraps up in a journey, of life. Basically, I would say is quite philosophical. That's those are my kind of viewpoints on that. But to yourself, Joe, what's
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I am actually very time poor at the moment. For people who don't know, I'm a newish dad, obviously. We've all got quite busy jobs. Typically, I always try and have a few irons in the fire, to keep kind of life interesting. But what I would say is that I think the games industry has tried to tackle this. I don't know what I would call it a problem, right? But it's trying to tackle the diversity of gamers, if you like, before. And it's maybe try to do it with episodic content, that sort of thing. And now it might be trying to tackle it with smaller sized AAA titles, like your Spider-Man Miles Morales type of size games. I also think they've definitely got one eye on this. I mean, it's not just about age either. It's just about time investment, because obviously games basically they're not just fighting against other games. They're fighting against everything else, like music, cinema, YouTube, anything that takes time. I think Jim Ryan had a recent interview and he said something that was actually quite profound. He actually said a lot of the art that PlayStation produce is gated almost, because really, let's say per AAA game that maybe PlayStation produce, there's 20 million people that sample it. But for other types of media, there's hundreds of millions. But I think the big difference of those, other types of media are just the time investment. You want to listen to a tune, 5 minutes? You want to see a film? It's kind of like, it's like 3 hours. Yeah. Maybe kind of a TV series is a little bit different. But really, that's going to end up, unless you're kind of going to binge on kind of box sets, you're talking about a couple of hours a week. Whereas a game is a very different sort of time investment. If you know what I mean? Totally different.
Probably depends on the game, though, I think.
It does.
Some will take all the hours of the day that you can possibly get.
Yeah.
Some are limited.
Yeah, some are limited, but we don't play those limited games that often. As core gamers, I've got to say, that doesn't happen often.
This is another topic for another time, but I watched something around how gaming can hijack your brain, because we're all designed to basically solve problems. So even when you're not playing the game, your brain is still solving the problems in the game, particularly a live service MMO RPG type game, right? Whether we like it or not, right? And that's another topic, is gaming bad and addictive or whatever? I mean, this topic, there's lots of questions sub-nested within here, but I don't think this is much of a problem, because from a gamer, media customer perspective, it's nice to have options.
Yep.
Whether music, videos, or games, and then the genres within the games. From a publisher developer perspective, I don't think they're ever the time and age ever is going to cause a problem, because the growth is on the additional number of gamers coming in, either because the population is growing or more people see gaming as not a taboo and join it. And I think that's all their growth is going to come from there, versus gamers falling off because they're having less time because they're competing with media and music, or they're getting to a certain age and maybe the games aren't suitable for them. I think there's enough growth on just people just coming in on the conveyor belt.
Yeah, I think there's one condition that hasn't been addressed, which is, and I don't know, this probably exacerbated by social media and other things, right? But the whole FOMO kind of thing, right? It's being afraid of missing out, right? You almost you have so many of these live service games. If you've got friends playing in other games that you're not able to invest any time in, you're almost a bit missing out to an extent. There's a level of, I don't know, there's something there that actually may cause you to be in a very difficult position where you're probably investing more time than you even possibly should be investing in. So there's something that's kind of behind there somewhere. I mean, I don't think it is a big issue, but I suspect there is some impact in there somewhere.
I find like it's very relevant for me. Like, for example, with you guys, right, where I want to find a game to play with you guys, and we're all just playing different games, and because there's so much variety, and I think that's where it becomes a bit of a problem, because at the particular moment in time, your friend wanting to be interested in that game, as well as lining up the time. and I find, like with Destiny, I've gone, people have come and left, but I've got a friends group who I don't really know. I've never met them in person, and I think that's how my gaming life is going to be now going forwards. And I've kind of come to that realization and just being comfortable with it, versus trying to convince my friends, oh, there's this game coming out, let's play that together. It just doesn't. I still say it. It just does not going to happen, because there's just so much variety now.
Yeah, there's too much content. I mean, I remember saying this in our last podcast. That's one of the big differences between now and back when I kind of started playing games, or even 10 years ago. The amount of content that's available to us now is just amazing. You could literally find, kind of every week, you could find a game that you've never heard about that would look quite compelling, that you'd actually want to at least try. And back in the day, it was never like this. But now, yeah, there's so much of it. I mean, it's just you need 10 lives if you know what I mean. In parallel.
It's that's what I actually thought about all this. As sad as it might sound, I thought I wish I could do. What's that? I can't remember the name of the film now. God, when he goes in multiple, he pauses time and goes in multiple dimensions. What's it called? Inception.
Ah, yeah.
I wish I could do an Inception and just increase the time and then go down in level, and then you could have infinite amount of time to read books and magazines and play games and movies.
Yeah.
That's the only way it's going to happen.
Stands,
But,
it
The
stands
resulting
still.
outcome is your mind will turn to mush, though.
Possibly.
Yeah.
That's also possible. It's an interesting conversation. And Jay, I think you're also right. I think as time goes on, right, the people playing games is going to broaden. Definitely broaden. And then I wonder if it broadens whether people kind of also start looking at the amount of time investment you need in games as well. Rather than having some long, drawn-out game, story or otherwise, you have a really short, sharp, dense, intense experience for 3 hours or whatever it may be, and then you're done. Who knows?
Indie games do that quite well, don't they?
I mean, it should be on my list as well, but I was just also mentioned the fact that there is a regional disparity as well with China's ban on kind of, I think it was either children where they were limited to playing was it an hour on Friday or a weekend or something? So even then,
Was it 3 hours a week? 3 hours a week,
very,
was it not?
very limited. But that would have an impact on, I guess, a chain of younger gamers, I guess, to an adulthood, I guess.
They've gone even further now. There's a list of genres of games that aren't allowed to be published in China because it influences people's mindset and it affects the culture. So, like, no violence. I mean, how many games have violence in there, right? So the other thing I wanted to say, I've forgotten it. It'll come back to me now. There was something I wanted to say in that.
There's your old age kicking in.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Did you know why you need to spend less time playing games?
Oh no, I've remembered now. Sorry, this was what it was, right? So I've really got this interest in following gaming news, and I always have, but I do it far more in the last probably 5 years. And I thought about it this week, and without actively thinking about it, just one of those things my brain's been working through, and it's just clicked on this call. Is because there's so much variety in games. By following the news and watching a couple of trailers, I can get a bit of a buzz from the game mechanic from a video or an article without actually investing time in playing it, and that also creates enjoyment.
But I think this is also the popularity of Twitch, right? You're seeing a gamer play it in front of you. You're interacting with them. You're almost seeing the game at the same time. It's like it's another method of, I don't know. It's like optimizing your time.
It works, yeah. No, I agree with that. I always use it as a technique to make sure the game doesn't add to my backlog.
Get someone else to play it for you, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I would never watch the whole game, but I mean, 20 minutes, 10 minutes of a game, and like, okay, I can see what it is, and yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's the core mechanic. Most games have a loop on a mechanic, don't they? And that's pretty much it.
An interesting topic for another podcast, actually, just the whole really movement around watching game streams and also competitive gaming these days and all that sort of thing, because it's becoming almost a kind of real televised sport.
Well, the Dota International is happening right now.
Yeah,
$40 million
like
US dollars the prize.
no small chunk of change.
Wow.
No small chunk of change. And guys, I think with that said, and to be honest, with really inconclusive conclusions, other than we actually want to play games no matter what, and we want to expend whatever time we have to play games, and like games going to broaden in terms of who's playing them over time. Did a lot of different models. I think it's really time to move on to the next topic. Hey guys, so what I want to do right now is I want to dive into the last Nintendo Direct. I think there was some good stuff shown, some interesting announcements that are non-gaming related also.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is what I kind of want to get into. Jay, I think for this one, I'm going to let you start.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So just kind of looking at the big picture, then I start with my thoughts on the bigger piece, and it'd be good to get everybody's thoughts, and then we can kind of go through the list of games and announcements, and then kind of wrap up with what are things that we've really kind of stood out for us. For me, the last couple of directs have been, not that exciting, almost been filler. There's not really been any big game announcements, a couple of DLCs. This particular one I thought was just watching it, I was engaged, and there were a couple of announcements now which I thought were pretty good. Probably not all games that I would go out and buy and play, but in terms of a good direct, I thought this was very, very strong. And Joe, what were your kind of initial impressions of the?
I was bored, but I don't think I was paying that much attention to it. I actually thought the Nintendo Directs during E3 was actually decent.
Right.
I thought that was a decent showing. But for this one, for whatever reason, the first time I saw it, I was bored. I was just a little bit, I was kind of a little bit underwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
But having watched it again, I would say there were some fairly interesting announcements, and there were some things I didn't really expect.
Right.
If I'm being honest, all things considered, it was actually a strong showing. That's what I would say.
Yeah, that's great. Al, did you get a chance to?
I didn't even watch
direct?
it, so I'm waiting to hear what you guys think of it, and then.
And what was the reason for that? Is that because you just got written off Nintendo, and you're focusing more on the PC PlayStation side?
I guess the media outlets I would be watching, anything big, I'd probably hear about it.
Right.
And I think it's probably a balance of time to find what would root me the most information, rather than Genshin Impact also do these kind of big kind of preview release kind of things, and it takes like a couple of hours. I'm just like, well, I'll just wait for someone to do a highlights video.
Yeah, that's what I've typically done in the last couple, because there's been a pattern of them not being that great. So I'll have a look on her website and see hear a couple of the highlights and trailers, and if it's good, then I'll go back and watch it. But for this one, I was put it in my diary and make sure I was there. Cool. All right, it's just in terms of like kind of highlights of the key games. So there was, and feel free to jump in as well if you've got any thoughts on any of these games. So the Bayonetta 3 was the kind of the big moment at the end of the reveal. It's not really a game that I would buy, but watching it, the gameplay live, I thought it looked really good, because this one's been kind of not shown for a while. It's got a big fan base. People are worried about it, is it having development problems, because they're not showing it for some time. But it had quite a strong showing at the end of the show as a kind of one more thing type thing. Did you have any thoughts on Bayonetta 3? Is it something any of you guys played the other games?
Yeah, I played the first one. First one's really good.
Is it a Switch exclusive?
Yeah, Switch exclusive.
I think it is. Yeah.
That might push me to buy one. That might actually push me to buy one.
It was first announced in 2017 actually, so it's a bit of a slow burner in terms of development. No doubt about that. Oh, one thing about Bayonetta, I'll kind of like put out there, is that I don't know if you guys remember the first and second Bayonetta, but it was quite risque. It was really quite risque, right? Because if you saw a lot of the supers that she'd use and the specials were formed out of her hair,
right?
But her hair also constituted her clothes.
Okay.
And I think they've kind of got rid of all of that. And
ooh, interesting.
Yeah, exactly. When the specials hit, and you had these kind of large creatures that she was creating, there was none of the "this is my hair, I've got no clothes on" sort of scenario. And it was just her kind of like doing some sort of dance in the background while the specials were kicking off. And I think it's a kind of a sign of the times.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why it's gone into hiding for a while. They've
Possibly.
probably wrapped her up in clothes for some of those moves.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is, though, with a lot of these types of games, there's always certain countries will have a requirement to censor a lot of that kind of stuff. So I think what they'll find is their main fan base might be up in arms about it.
Diehards.
Exactly that. And they'll call it censorship, right? That's what they'll call it.
Yeah, I just think the world is in a different place to where it was. Kind of like, let's say, 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That's what I noticed about it. It goes, okay, it's a little less risque. It's a little less carry on, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, sure.
For the people in the UK that understand that, Carry On was a very risque kind of series of films in the 60s and 70s.
Very, very good. Just moving on, so Splatoon 3 was shown as well. I mean, I've played the demos of the first and second one, and it's good. It just, when you've been playing first-person shooters on a console, it just seems like almost too light. But it's got a very strong following, and I can imagine that's going to sell a lot of units. That was from a Nintendo community, that's would have been a strong one. Next on the list was Kirby, which I thought was quite interesting. It's probably not a game I'm going to buy, but it looks like they've actually changed up the Kirby formula. Rather than be a kind of side-scrolling 2DS kind of platform, they've actually gone for something that looks a little bit like Mario Odyssey. And I think some people have been talking about they're probably using the same game engine. But did you guys see this trailer? Did you?
I did. I agree with you. I mean, it's obviously more of a Mario 64, Mario Odyssey, like Mario Galaxy type of format now. And historically, Kirby's always been 2D.
Yes.
But you know what? I would have preferred Kirby to stay at 2 or maybe 2.5D almost. Sometimes when you go fully 3D, you lose some of the charm.
It was the same with Mario 64, wasn't it? The 3D was a bit clunky to begin with.
Yeah, there's a little element of that.
Until you get used to it, I think was part of the issue.
I was mind blown by Mario 64, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, if you play it now, it hasn't aged well, but for the time, it was mind blowing. And I think, Nintendo has quite big gaps between their kind of 3D platform, Mario Odyssey or the Zeldas, and they need something else to kind of fill in that gap. They've got Donkey Kong. I can imagine Donkey Kong being really good in a kind of 3D space, but they haven't done it since the kind of the 64 sort of games. They've tried it with Kirby here, and I think it's one of those games. It looked interesting. It didn't look nowhere near as Mario ever was going to benchmark it against. But I think it's one of those games you're going to have to play and see how good some of the platforming puzzles are for it to justify itself. But it's still, at least they're trying, Nintendo. I think. Oh, that was a positive. Yeah. That's probably enough on that one. The other headline was Monster Hunter Rise. There's a DLC that's coming out called Sunbreak. I don't know if you guys have played this. I've actually got this game on my Switch, and when I was having a break from Destiny, I played it for 2-3 months just to kind of get into it. It's actually quite a deep game. I probably came up to a bit of a wall because it didn't have some of the in-game guidance. You probably have to go online to read into some of the mechanics. But from this trailer perspective, I thought it looked really good. They showed one of those one of the big enemies. I think at the same time they announced, I don't know if it was on part of the direct, but offline, the game's coming to the PC in Q1 next year, is it?
Yeah, I think I've already seen some early versions of it come out. Maybe it's only beta only, but yeah, Q1 makes sense. I think that's quite similar to what World was like.
Was that cross-play from console to PC?
It wasn't, because the patch cycle was different. The PlayStation and Xbox, I guess, was 1 year ahead. So they were never in sync. But in theory, it would have been great for at least cross-progression or cross-play would be perfect.
Because I could do with your help on this, because you're a kind of a long-running Monster Hunter player. I've hit a bit of a wall on this. I'm going to go and check, see if it's cross-play, but I'd love to play with that with you online.
Yeah. I think I've left it because, again, I think my brother, he ordered his Switch specifically for MH Rise, and he played that through, so he's played that. I wasn't going to jump into it just for Rise.
Is it a similar game to World?
Similar, more fluid. There's some interesting additional mechanics.
they've evolved it. I can't list it off the top of my head, but from what I read about it, and the little I've played under the demo of World, it's not a Nintendo DS upgrade. It's an evolution of the World, obviously reduced graphics to make it allow to, but the mechanics they've evolved it. For example, you've got verticality in the maps now, which you don't have in World, do you?
We had a tiny bit only with the DLC. So there was a thing called a clutch claw, which allowed you to grab onto certain parts of the monster.
Right. Okay.
Which gave you a bit more vertical movement, a bit more.
This is it's a game I really like, to be honest. And I think it's sold very well as well. So I imagine this is going to pull people back as well. But I'll see if it's got crossplay. I doubt it, given it's a Switch. The other big announcement as well, and I really would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Right, was they're bringing N64 games to their online service, and there's a couple of parts I would like this kind of to hear your thoughts on. So there's the increase in price, which I haven't mentioned. They're calling this. Sorry, let me start with what's included, right? So they announced an extension to the online service called an expansion pack, and it includes a bunch of games for the N64, which I'll go through in a second. But more interestingly, they've added Mega Drive games, Genesis if you're in the US, which I thought came out from nowhere, which was really interesting. The games they've listed seem to be a much better set of games than when they came out with the SNES games.
The classics.
Yeah, with the classics. They have finally introduced some of the classics of the SNES and the NES, but they didn't have it off the bat, where they seem to have come with some big games. So that's the second part. They're interesting. They haven't talked about the pricing. I'd like to get your views on what the pricing might be. I think it's around. I think I pay around £20 or £20 a year for my online service, but you don't get much. But I only did it for the online saves.
It's still cheaper than, well, then again, I guess the PSN Plus includes other things.
Yeah.
So
I think it's what you get for your money, and I don't think £20 a year is a lot, but I understood that the Nintendo Online service was quite bare bones.
It is.
Yeah, and I don't know what the price increase is for this new plan either. Look, I'm a bit of a retro guy. You know, in some shape or form, I've got thousands of retro games on my computer. I've literally got all of it. And whilst I've got all of it, I think it excites me somewhat when people do this sort of thing on their service. Because, retro is retro, it's great, yeah? And I wish kind of PlayStation would do this. To a degree, kind of Xbox do a bit more of this.
Yep.
But, Nintendo have a heritage of games, so of course they should do it. They got the legacy, but like you said, Jay, out of the blue, saying Sega Genesis games, and these Sega Genesis games were tier 1 games.
Yep.
They were tier 1.
Yep.
Synonymous with the Mega Drive Genesis. So that was actually quite interesting to see.
Yeah.
Can I just rattle them off very quickly? So the N64.
Yeah.
For the N64, we've got Mario 64, Mario Kart 64, Lilac Wars. Which is basically Star Fox, but name change,
Star
right?
Fox,
We've got Yoshi, we've got Ocarina of Time, Zelda, Mario, Dr. Mario, Mario Tennis, Win Back, which was a rare game, and there's another game which I can't tell the name of it. And for the Mega Drive, we've got Golden Axe, Strider, just calling out the big ones. I know Sonic 2, Streets of Rage, Shinobi, Echo the Dolphin, Castlevania, Contra, and there's a couple more, but those are the big ones. That's a pretty good list.
I am surprised they did that.
Yeah.
Because those Mega Drive compilations sell really well on every single platform. I don't know how many versions of it I've already purchased in the past. I think I've got it on PS3, PS4, and on the PC now. So
yeah, there are actually more Sega Genesis Mega Drive games than I think there were N64 games.
There are.
Yeah, I think that's what I got from it. I mean,
but those N64 games are they're AAA N64 era games.
Yeah,
true,
they
haven't. I mean,
they're definitely tier 1 as well. Yeah.
I think I think they mentioned. Oh, actually, sorry to add, the Majora's Mask F-Zero X, Banjo-Kazooie, Mario Golf, Kirby 64, Paper Mario, and Pokemon Snap are coming
Yeah.
shortly afterwards. So they've just gone bang with this offering
And they support 4-player online.
online
The split
as
the
well.
split screen stuff
Yes.
was,
I think
the
this is
N64's well known.
and they've got the N64 hardware, the controller
Yeah.
updated as in wireless.
Yeah, it's
and
wireless.
the Mega Drive controller as well. I think this is a massive, understated, uppercut, roundhouse kick from the presentation, which at the time I was like, oh, that's cool. But when I went back and looked at it, like as you were saying, Joe, I'm, and even more now, I'm actually looking at those controllers, thinking I probably want to get one of those. No, just for my kids to experience at some point.
Definitely.
The stuff that you just covered there, that gives me another reason to go buy a Switch now. Because actually, in a portable format, because this is the other thing, is like I would love to go over to catch up with some friends. One of my gamer friends probably, and if you've got some time, we'll have a quick game of Golden Axe or something on a Switch. You just bring across a couple of controllers and off you go.
Definitely.
Don't have to worry about anything else.
I think the only thing is, I think I could be wrong on this. You can download the game, but I think it needs to be online to play the
online connectivity.
Oh.
It should be okay though. I think most places you'll have a broadband connection, or if not, you can tether 4G or 5G. You can probably make it work.
But how much is this expansion pack on the service though? Does anybody know?
No, people are talking about £10 and max 20, but I think that's reasonable. They'll add more games as well over time.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if it's. I think it's a fair ask, to be honest.
I'm just surprised they bundled it in.
It's not competitive, but it is good for Nintendo, because Nintendo are stingy on everything, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
that's what I mean. I would have thought they wouldn't have bundled it in there, and you would just sell it as a compilation, and in volumes, as what they do with the Mega Drive today. You'd make a ton of money. I would, even in a compilation of sets of Mega Drive compilations or N64 compilations, I would probably get a Switch just to purchase that one and pay £20 outright for it.
I mean, they must get numbers on how much these compilations make these days, and I imagine that is getting less and less. They probably think now's the right time let's get some kudos and marketing points as well, just to sound a little bit more cynical. But it's definitely a good thing they're doing. I mean, it's just like you didn't expect it.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're more reserved roster of games, but they've come out swinging with that one.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And you just feel there was very little to kind of really say about Nintendo's online service up to this point. It's there, it works. That's pretty much it. I've never ever heard anybody talk much about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's light, but as £20 a year for me to not lose my save files in case the console goes kaput. It was. I just thought.
I bet that's money well spent there.
Yeah, I just paid that. Out of 10, just on the.
Ooh, we're not finished. There was one thing I want to kind of call out.
Sorry, I jumped the gun. I was going to ask a rating just for the expansion pack, not.
The expansion pack.
Yeah, what would you?
I don't know what I'd give it actually. I mean, because I don't have a lot of experience with Nintendo's existing newest online service.
From excitement, let's just say, as a Nintendo fan, what did it ring the bell at?
Yeah,
7
it did.
out of
I think
10,
the Sega piece really kind of rang the bell really quite hard, because I didn't expect that. I'd give that. I'm just trying to think about this rationally. I think I have to give it really a 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10, yeah.
Yeah, because it just the whole, here's the N64 games, and that wasn't absolutely unexpected. Oh, by the way, we got this thing with Sega as well, and you're getting tier 1 games. Yeah, and here's some controllers, so you can kind of scratch your retro itch. I'm just thinking it from the retro slant, really.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's where it's. And yourself, Al?
Oh, I would have gone.
System seller for you is. You're gonna get.
It's an 8. It's an 8, I think. I think you've listed out from the Mega Drive perspective. As soon as you talk Golden Axe, Streets of Rage, those two are great co-op games.
Yeah.
Right. You mentioned the Sonic ones. system sellers. The only other one missing, and typically they bundle it, is Altered Beast, and that's pretty much it. And that's the compilation. Really.
I'm surprised that was missed there actually. But yeah, that's cool. I was going to move on very quickly. I'm just going to wrap up with some of the other announcements, and then you feel free to jump in. So there was an announcement there was an Animal Crossing free DLC coming in November. So fans were excited about that because that is sold like hotcakes. For me, it looks good. I don't want to invest the time basically. Super Smash Brothers, they mentioned that there will be a final fighter, which since the actual event they've announced it's Suro from Kingdom Hearts, is that which I'm not
Okay, yeah.
That's the final character. I think he's done with the whole Smash Brothers, but what a roster of characters in that game. That's a system seller as well. Metroid Dread, so they showed that game. That's since been released. It's reviewed quite well. I'm probably going to get that, but I'll wait for the price to come down. Mario Party was mentioned, which is I think a package. Mario Party Superstars, which is a package of lots of the levels from older Mario Party games. Hyrule Warriors, there was a DLC. The other highlights, there was and you guys probably know this character more than me, but there was like an equivalent to Mario Kart, Chobo GP.
Chocobo, GP, from Square Enix.
Looked like a good game. The frame rate was terrible.
It's an older PS1 or PS2 game actually.
Yeah.
It's not a new game. It's not a new game. They've actually just
Well, it might be a new game, but it's not the first time they've done this.
The concept would have been from PS1.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. There was some extra levels of Mario Golf. There was Castlevania Advanced Collection. I think that's got a bunch of games Castlevania fans were wanting from the Game Boy Advance. That was a big announcement.
That looks interesting. I like these old school games that they package up, and they're just gonna give it a little bit extra, and
I've not played any of the Castlevania games. Is it something worth going back to play? Is it hold up well, age well, or?
I think there's quite a few. They call it Metroidvania. I think nowadays as a grouping of these classifications of games. But there are some good ones as well, the modern ones. But I would say probably like the SNES ones are probably good enough to go back to. And actually, to be honest, because they're all side-scrolling, generally they're all pretty safe to go back to.
Right.
Worth playing simply from the perspective of nostalgia and kind of the history of these things.
Yeah. So I'm sure there must be lots of fans who are happy about that. The other two I wanted to mention, which probably aren't big things, but they're my personal kind of highlights from it. There was a game called Triangle Strategy.
Yes, I wanted to call it out.
So, I mentioned earlier that since playing Destiny, I've suddenly got, RPGs actually are interesting. I've Dragon Quest 10 or 11? I can't remember which is the latest one. It's quite old now, but it's... I
think it's probably 11. I might be wrong, but...
11, 11. I've got a demo, but that's the sort of game I'm now interested in. I haven't got to playing. I've got Octopath Traveler, which I just loved the whole kind of mechanics of it. I only got maybe 2/5 of the way through. I need to go back and revisit that. But this Triangle Strategy is in the same sort of, not the same game, but same style, and I like that.
It's a tactical RPG, so it will be turn-based. So it'll be a little bit like Disgaea, if you know that. And there's a Final Fantasy Tactics as well, which is really known tactical.
Yeah.
But I just loved the way it looked. It had this kind of brilliant art style, you know what I mean? And I thought, wow, guys, you know what I mean? Like, this is good.
I'm definitely getting it, that one. And then the other one, which I think is from Square Enix, which I thought looked quite good, because Al, you've got me into the card games, playing what's it now?
Slay the Spire.
Slay the Spire. I'm hooked on card games now. But it was called Voice of Cards.
I saw that.
Isle Dragon Roars. I think that's a Square Enix game. That looked quite good as well. So
it was too much cards for me, mate. I looked at it. And I thought, everything was a card. Literally everything. And I thought, no, I don't think. It's not for me. I'm kind of thinking.
Yeah, fair enough. Both those games have got a free trial instantly. You can download. So. But those are the other little personal highlights. Was there anything else from you guys in terms of games you wanted to mention? I think that we've gone through the main ones.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of gushed around kind of Triangle Strategy, Metro Dread. I kind of really like the look of. Yeah, there's this thing called ActRaiser Renaissance. It was a really interesting side-scrolling action game, and then it flipped over into more of a kind of world-building kind of populist type of game. So there's two things in one. It's not a new game. Don't get me wrong. It's not a new game, but it's a well-known old game that they brought back.
So I saw a video on
Digital Foundry.
Digital Foundry, yes, and they reviewed this game because this game was out on the day of the Direct, and apparently it's a classic game that's got a mix of kind of side-scrolling and top-down of strategy planning. But apparently I wasn't sure the frame rate, but the kind of the feel of the game is kind of off.
Frame pacing,
yeah. So they said, it's not as good as it could have been, which is a bit of a shame because this one also piqued my eye as well. I seem to like so maybe 20 years too late, seem to like some of Square Enix's kind of old school style RPG styles now.
If you want those ones, and if you like the sort of tactics ones, Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yeah.
And what was the other one? Front Mission 3? I think it was Front Mission. Let me just check what it is.
Disgaea, man. Disgaea. Don't forget Disgaea. Classic.
Is that on the Switch, the Final Fantasy? It must be, right?
I don't know if they've done tactics. I would imagine they would.
I'd be surprised if it wasn't. Because it's quite an old game.
And does it still play well? It was
a really great game back in the day. It's one of those that I would have multiple copies of.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. No, I'll check it out. Thanks for that. I said maybe we've talked it up a bit more. How would you rate the whole Direct then?
Before we rate it, did you guys see that Miyamoto announcement about the Mario film?
Oh, sorry, I mentioned that. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Did you see who was playing Mario, voicing Mario?
Yes, it was
Chris Pratt.
Chris Pratt. Yeah, that's right.
It was Mr. Guardians of the Galaxy. It's actually quite amazing that he's doing that. Actually, I'm not sure how that's going to work. But I've got a list of the actors down here that I kind of noted, right? And there's some really well-known actors here, and I was actually a little bit surprised. I got to be honest, right? Anna Taylor, is it Joy? Playing Princess Peach. Charlie Day, playing Luigi, and he was the guy that was one of the scientists, or the scientist in Pacific Rim that connected with, the aliens. And Jack Black is playing Bowser.
It's a strong cast.
Yeah, really strong. Keegan-Michael Key told, and you'd recognise him. He's a well-known American comedian. And Seth Rogen is playing Donkey Kong.
That's crazy.
Bloody A-list, man. It is absolutely A-list.
This is there's so much money riding on this and perception. This has to be a really good film. I'm not saying it is going to be.
Yeah.
But from Nintendo's perspective, it has to be.
I mean, is it? It's an animation, right? Is it an animation?
Okay, so it's being produced by Illumination Studios.
Despicable Me.
Despicable Me and Minions.
Yeah, so it's an animation, which is good.
Okay, that'll be a bit. That's a bit safer, right? Because you could do something. Because I think the Sonic movie eventually was pretty good after. After the model was redone, right?
Yeah.
So the acting and stuff didn't change. I didn't think changed, right? So I think in general the the movie eventually got good ratings.
After the last Mario movie, I mean, it's probably something that you're gonna want to avoid, right? The Bob Hoskins.
That was a classic. It was a classic at the time, but it's a terrible film.
Yeah, it's a terrible film.
For the wrong reasons, it was a classic. I recently bought the book and read, and then watched the film Lorax, which is produced by the same studio, and the actual 3D models and style of the kind of characters. I think Illumination Studios is a good fit for Mario. Whether they can construct a compelling story that doesn't seem odd because Mario never talks is where I think it's going to be make or break, I think.
Well, Miyamoto said something, going back to what you said about Mario doesn't really talk, Miyamoto said something that was quite contradictory to what you said, which is, again, quite weird. He said something about Chris Pratt will be talking a lot. Like, thinking about what you just said, Jay, and then what Miyamoto said,
I mean, he makes noises, Mario.
Yeah, no, but
that's about it. But
I don't think they can pay Chris Pratt the many millions they're probably paying him just to make a few noises. You know what I mean? I don't think that's gonna cut it, but.
I wonder what accent he's gonna have.
Yeah, that's the thing. You know, that's the thing. So, some Texan accent, basically, that he's going to put on for Mario or something like yeah. Hey, it's me, it's Mario.
I think it'll be fun. Nintendo aren't. They're such a strong. They've got a really strong, even stronger brand and catalog, and they're on a roll at the moment with the Switch.
They'll protect their IP. There's no doubt about that.
They'll just axe the film if it's not good.
Yeah, they'll protect that IP.
Yeah, I think they'll be fine. Was there anything else you wanted to mention on that, Joe, before we kind of?
No, I think we got everything, but yeah, it's one of my pet hates. I just wish the guy that was hosting the actual director, what's his name? Kazumi? I think his name is Kazumi. I wish he'd stop asking us, what do you think of that? Like, that's one of my pet hates. Yeah.
With a funny lips.
Yeah, what do you think of that?
Tell him to go read the YouTube comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the slapstick style of the whole thing.
Yeah,
so.
definitely.
Not to prolong this topic, yay, nay, or okay.
That was good.
I think it was a yay. It was a yay for me. I think. I'm going to say 7.5 for this if I have to give it a number. But I think it's a definite yay. I think they did quite well.
Sounds like a very good set of content. I'm actually going to go and have a look at it now. I think
Yeah.
this is what I'm going to do. And Jay, on the topic of the sort of Castlevania type things, it looks like there isn't a tactics version for Switch and the release date. There isn't a front mission, but the one I wanted to mention was Bloodstained. Is the game name?
What, Castlevania?
Bloodstained is a Metroidvania style game. It was on PC first, but came on Switch.
So I was looking at that game for a long time, and I was going to buy it on the Switch, but it had really bad performance when it came out. And then I was hoping they sorted the performance and got it stuck at 30. Then I was hoping they were going to patch it to make it 60. Then that never happened. And then then I thought, maybe I'll get it on the PlayStation. So I think I probably will get it, but not on the Switch.
Yeah, I think that's fair. If it doesn't perform well, then yeah, it's a difficult one. But again, essentially, pretty much all Castlevania type games are very similar to what Bloodstained's like. So they all follow that very similar style.
But that game looks good though, Bloodstained. That's probably the type of, and I think this triangle strategy is probably going to looks. I had a quick look at the images of tactics. It's probably going to give me enough of that kind of. But yeah, I've just got a soft spot for that type of game now. I don't know what's happened. I don't know what.
They're just charming, these types of games as well. I mean, you got the art style and the fact that it's going to be deep.
There was another game on the Switch which was very much like that. I'll dig out the name, but that was that was very popular.
Yeah, cool. And Al, was a yay from you from the.
Yeah, it sounded really good.
Yeah.
I mean, probably a 7, 8. I've not looked at it yet, so I'll probably go have a look at it. But even just from what was covered, it sounds interesting.
Just audio switch after this podcast, and then go watch it. I'm probably the same as you guys. Definitely yay, probably 8 out of 10. I feel like I've got even more invested after we've gone through the games on this. Cool. But yeah, that sums up the Nintendo Direct.
And guys, with that done, let's move on to our next topic, or maybe it's just our goodbyes. Alright guys, it's come to that time of the podcast where we need to say goodbyes, and and ask the same regular question I ask every podcast, right? And that is, what have we been doing gaming wise, and what kind of tech things have we been kind of dabbling in? Al, I'll kind of turn it over to you first.
I think for me, this time is actually probably an interesting update. So I guess from a gaming perspective, a lot of, as we already covered in this podcast, a lot of Diablo 2 Resurrected, really enjoying that. I would say probably, obviously, spending less time on Genshin as a result, and still quite a bit of Punishing Grey Raven. But Diablo has captured me again. I'm really enjoying that. From a tech perspective, I've actually done a few things. There was a patch to the AMD Radeon drivers, but allowed smart access memory for the 5000 series GPUs. So I did a BIOS update, and I've enabled Smart Access Memory, and it does actually feel slightly quicker. So yeah, it seems to have done the trick. But it's just basically a bit of free performance gains, really, as a result. So that's really me.
Did you repaste your graphics card as well?
No, not yet. I've still got the kit, but I was going to repaste it and then add some more heat pads, thermal pads across the back, which should improve it. But I also want to get some statistics on it. So now that I've stabilized on Smart Access Memory and all that sort of stuff, I'm going to gather some statistics and then do the fixes to it.
Good job.
Just to see how much more I gain in terms of heat kind of dissipation on it.
Cool. And Jay, how about you?
Yeah, so as I mentioned at the top of the podcast, I've been playing a lot of demos and betas of games. Since we last spoke, I played Call of Duty Vanguard beta on the 27th of August, which was a hot mess. A hot mess. And amongst all of the controversy, that is going to go straight into the toilet, I think.
That bad?
Call of Duty is going to have. They're not going to sell any games with all the controversy at Activision, and that game was just complete. It was very badly broken, and it's gone back to World War II. I think I've seen enough. I'm not going to touch it. The other game I played recently was Battlefield 2042. I can see it being a good Battlefield game in terms of gameplay and modes. It's only on one map, but it was buggy as hell. So I'm going to leave that until it's in a discount and then it proves itself. The other thing which I finally got to use my Xbox for, because I've had it since I've not really played it, was Halo Infinite. I've played both of the second round of the betas, but it was over 2 weekends, and that game is so good. Halo is back, baby. It's so good.
Really?
It's the multiplayer only, right? Yeah. But it is running really well on the Series X. It feels like Halo. It's got new toys. The sandbox is great. I've played. There's about 4 maps on Slayer mode, and I forgot the kind of the zonal area kind of mode, which was really good. And Capture the Flag. Strongholds, so it's called Strongholds and Capture the Flag. Great game modes. And then the second weekend, they had Big Team Battle, 12 versus 12, on a map with all the vehicles. It is feeling so good. I literally, if the single player is rubbish in December, which I don't think it will be, because there's now some of the executives in Xbox that have played it and they're really impressed with it, apparently. I don't think they're going to say that, given how much controversy it is.
Yeah, of course.
But the multiplayer is absolutely solid. Graphics, frame rate, feel. I can't wait for you guys. I think it's still got some issues on the PC than performance-wise, but gameplay, feel of Halo is looking really strong. Other than that, what else have I been playing? I've just been carrying on playing Destiny, to be honest. I'm just keeping myself ticking over in the race.
Yeah.
So that's
Got it. So let's get to myself then. I'm still grinding out Ratchet and Clank. So I'm still getting through the kind of like there's only really a single player mode there. Yeah, I'm still impressed with the game. I mean, it literally is like playing a cartoon. That's the only thing I can say about it, really. It is super slick and visually stunning. What I will say though is that I don't think the gameplay matches the visuals. I will say that. The gameplay doesn't match the visuals.
Is it too simplistic?
I don't think it's that. It's simple. It is simple in comparison. There's no doubt about it. There's not a great deal of depth to it. Obviously you've got the weapons and the leveling up of the weapons. But whilst I think the production values and audio visuals are out of this world, the gameplay, it's still Ratchet and Clank. So it's it's certainly engaging. It's certainly something you can drop into quite easily and come out of quite easily. But it's not quite the top tier of kind of gameplay and kind of engagement. But really, I'm really at the moment just playing it to see what the levels look like next. You look at the visuals and you think, damn, this generation we have got a lot to look forward to. If this is the first attempt at a next gen console specific title with no ties to the old generation, then we're in for a treat, guys. We are in for a treat. Other than that, I'm kind of toying in the idea of playing XCOM again on my PC, because I think we discussed XCOM last time. And I thought, damn, I ought to play XCOM, So I think I'm going to do that. Tech-wise, I've just been grinding away at my my GCP training for the certification I'm going to be taking, and I've got plans on kind of like applying quite a few actually, patches and upgrades and whatnot. I'm not going to be upgrading to Windows 11 anytime soon, but I heard there's some sort of security vulnerabilities, around kind of A&D chips at the moment. So I think I probably need to get on top of flashing my BIOS and those sorts of geeky things, just for myself, just to know I've done it. And that's pretty much it, guys. That's pretty much what I'm kind of doing at the moment. And you know what? With that all said, I think it's really time for our goodbyes. So it's goodbye from me, Joel.
Yeah, it's goodbye from me, Al.
It's goodbye from me, Jay.
So guys, whatever you're doing, like, subscribe and support the channel, and have a stellar day.